introduction, but I have it here, and we have your talk, Reena, as navigating infertility, perinatal period, grief and loss with maternal mental health therapist, Reena Lanerolle. And just so you guys are aware, Reena is a maternal mental health therapist, licensed clinical professional counselor, and a certified rehabilitation therapist. She's also the mom of 2 young children. And through Reena's unique background, she gives holistic care that emphasizes each person's individuality. She also provides strength-based and solution-focused therapy at Counseling Works, which again, I have the link in there as well for you to check out the show notes. So, Reena, thanks again for being here. And why don't you go ahead and tell us 2 truths and a lie?
Okay. All right. 2 truths and a lie. I initially went to undergrad to get an English degree. I have 2 sisters, and I have never broken a bone.
Hmm. I'm going to say the English degree because I think I know you're undergrad, but maybe you also have an English degree. I'm not sure.
So I did go to undergraduate thinking I was going to get an English degree. That was my plan, and then fell in love with anthropology. But yes, I did start out wanting to get an English degree. I went to Kenyan, so English degree, the English focus there is really heavy. So I thought, yep, that's what I'm going to do.
Yes, yes. Well, you have so much interesting info, like just all your life story is just so incredible. All the things that have brought you to doing what you're doing. I mean, you work with horses as a equine therapist, and is that called that? Remind me of the correct
Yeah,
term.
equine facilitated psychotherapy, equine specialist. It has many names.
Yes, yes. And the anthropology, archaeology. I actually was texting Reena the other day because I found something in my parents' yard. I'm like, what is this? This like a piece of china. And like, it's awesome that you have you're Jill of all trades. I love it. Well, Reena, so I want to get started with asking you a bit about navigating infertility. I know that's a big part of your practice and what you talk about. Can you please share with us some information about just the infertility journey and your thoughts on it?
Sure. So navigating infertility is something that I think is getting more awareness. Certainly, there's more social media presence about women and families who are navigating it, but it still is in the shadows. And one of the reasons is because it's so complex. Of course, having a baby in general is complex. Adopting, fostering, anytime you're expanding your family, there's complexity. But particularly with infertility, it's a lot of conflicting emotions. And there's so much involved with like the medical world, and a lot of women, a lot of families sometimes can feel like, you're just a test subject. Like, okay, this one didn't work. We're going to try this. Oh, we're going to test your blood levels. We're going to try this combination of medication. And for a lot of people, it can take the excitement, joy, um, enthusiasm perhaps out of starting a family or expanding your family, and that means that it also creates some tension in relationships too. So if you're somebody who is struggling with infertility and you're navigating working with a reproductive endocrinologist, and you've had several transfers, or you've done IVF or IUI, families and friends that don't necessarily understand the process can ask those questions like, oh, how did it go, do you know if it's stick, how are you pregnant yet? Like, everyone's very excited for you. And if this is like your second, third, fifth, ninth transfer, sometimes you don't want to answer those questions. Sometimes it's
Mm.
nerve-wracking because perhaps you've suffered losses before, and the idea of everybody knowing your business is a little
Yeah.
overwhelming. And so I think that that's only one facet of it. But the other thing I think that's very hard to navigate with infertility is that at the end of the day, the goal is to have a baby. And you can't guarantee that. Even though we're using advanced medical science, even though there's a lot of understanding about how the process and the body works, it's still not guaranteed. So there's this sense of like, you could be putting all this money, energy, time into something that at the end of the day may not work out in the way that you want it to. So there's a huge grief process. There's like minute sort of microcosm grief processes throughout it, but then this overwhelming, like most endocrinologists, I think all reproductive endocrinologists are going to say, like, we're going to try this. We have good statistics on it, but we cannot promise anything. And that's part of the legal paperwork that you end up signing, is that like at the end of the day, you can do 10 transfers, you can have 8 embryos, and you may not have a baby. And that is really upsetting for people, and understandably so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's a lot to uh, control. I feel like it's so hard to let go of some of that control. Like
Yeah.
yes, and I'm so thankful for you being able to work with us that are experiencing infertility or fertility and that journey, because it really is a journey.
Mhm.
And I think it's just not talked about as much as, I mean, I feel like maybe we're beginning to talk a bit more about it, at least on the social media platforms a bit more, being more aware of it. But still, I think that it's hard because so many people make comments, and all the comments, I just, um, and it makes it, I think, even harder. And how do you recommend like kind of like brushing stuff like that off, or is that even possible? Like how do you work with that when people will say like, well, time for another or whatever that may be?
A lot of times I recommend, I mean, depending on the relationship, what I usually do with clients is we look at sort of the spheres of relationships. So you have your very close, obviously your partner or your other family members that are in the house with you, that are that kind of know what's going on. But then
Hmm.
even just outside that, like parents, siblings, extended family that maybe know more than everybody else. But even then, like, okay, so what is your boundary for them? What is your boundary
Yes.
for close friends? What is your boundary for work and acquaintances? And looking at those spheres and saying, can I build a script or a narrative around how I want to communicate this information? So like the coworker that every time you come into work is like, okay, so is there a baby coming? And you're like, I just get really tired of telling her. And it's this sort of like overwhelming, like she knows or they know, and I don't want to be a jerk, but at the same time, like I don't want to A, share all my personal information, and B, like maybe I'm trying to navigate loss. So what we do is
Mhm.
we build a script, and it's usually identified around boundaries that you want to have with that person or those group of people. Like, I don't have any news, but when I do, I will let you know, something like that. Or I'm not in a place to talk about it right now, or something to that extent that is firm in what it's saying, but perhaps
Mhm.
the presentation of it is gentle and appropriate for the circumstance or the relationship.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. And speaking of like, just grief and loss and in the perinatal period and even beyond, I mean, I feel like that is something that we really do examine either head on, or even like in the grief and loss of different stages or different identities.
Absolutely. One of the things that I think it is a truth about parenting, about being a mother, about being a father, is that grief is inherent in that process. And even if you've had no trauma, no negative experiences, and no loss, everything going perfectly well, and you have healthy children and had them on the first try and all those things, grief is part of the process of being a parent, being a positive, having a positive impact in our kids' lives. And it's small things sometimes. It's like, feeling that twinge of like, oh, getting, moving out of the baby clothes, and that's a little bit sad. And we talk a lot. There are jokes and memes all over social media about like packing away the baby things and like, oh, do I have baby fever? Like, I think we're done, but and just even decisions like we're done family planning. And
Mhm.
then the bigger transitions of my child is becoming more independent, all the way up until like my child is driving, my child is going to college, or they're into the trades, or they're doing something where they're leaving the nest, right? And
Mhm.
that's a you can be a conflicting set of emotions of like, I'm super excited, but like there goes my baby.
Yeah.
And that is grief, and that's a good grief, because we're able to watch our children grow and become who they're meant to be. But that's also sad because we're holding on to these memories and these experiences, and we remember when they were so little and vulnerable and helpless. And part of our I like to believe part of our job as good parents is to send our children out with all the skills, all of the emotional regulation techniques, and you know, able to make mistakes and learn from them. But there's also grief for us with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is something that is so important to talk about. Um, because, yeah, I mean, I almost feel like now that my kids are getting older, I'm feeling that a lot sometimes. So just like my daughter will be in third grade next year, and I was filling out some forms about it. And not that that's like too terribly old or anything, but it's still like I remember her being a baby, and it's like, how in the world is she just like just full blown school age? And soon enough, it'll be, whatever it is, whatever stage in childhood, adolescence, adulthood. Um, and I think I'm just reminded of and curious on your thoughts of like how can you kind of capture little moments as they get older and they kind of, and naturally want to kind of be their own person and all of that. Like I feel the need now, I'm thinking much more about it because she is getting older, of how can I capture this time with her? What can we do together? Can we go on like dates or, just little activities here and there?
Absolutely. And I think there's two pieces to that. One is your sort of memory box of like how do I want to remember this time? How do I, sort of capture this in a moment? And then her experience of that as well. So, photos, videos, those are readily accessible to us in a way that maybe they weren't when you and I were growing up. And so
Mhm.
that's part of it. But also I love the idea of, like you said, experiences. So something where she's, in her late 30s and she's remembering, oh, I remember when mom took me to LA and we went to, Hollywood and we did all these things, just the two of us. And that was really impactful. One of the, common terms is like core memory, those kind of things
Yeah.
where we're building those memories and those relationships in a way that's not just something to put on social media or just to take a picture for. It's the entirety of that experience and
Mm.
doing things that connect to both of you. So I know you're a musician and being able to connect with that with your kids of like maybe going to take them to the CSO or doing something. They have the kids networking things for a lot of the orchestras in the area, or the
Yeah.
operas, things like that that at the time they might be like, yeah, that was fine, Bob, that was cool. But then they're gonna
Mhm.
totally, I mean, if we think back to our childhoods, we totally remember those moments. And it's like, that was really special.
Yes, yes. I think that is so true. And those novel moments, I feel like it helps me remember them more too, where
Hmm.
it's like it's not just this mundane. And I mean this was a crazy not often we're doing this, but what I'm thinking of is when we spent the night at the Field Museum. Like that was just so fun. And
Yeah.
obviously we aren't going to be spending the night at the museum often, but I will remember that. And I think my daughter
Hmm.
will as well. And I'm going to have my son do it this year. And just the colors you can remember. Like, I feel like it is a bit of we think we're going to remember everything and we think that we're going to remember exactly how one baby giggled or how they did whatever they did and those memories fade and it is really like remembering the colors but also telling the short story sharing what it was like and I also I'm reminded of when we did go to a little tea date and I it was kind of a disaster to be honest. Like she got sick and it was just I thought it was like a total I'm like, okay, I don't know. That wasn't didn't sound seem that fun because we lasted for
Hmm.
like, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes or so. But
Yeah.
then a couple months ago, I said, do you remember when we went to that tea? He was just in conversation and she was like, yeah, why would I ever forget that, mom? That was so nice or something like that. And she's very
Yeah.
verbose.
Yeah.
And but I was like, oh, I guess like she will remember that. And I'm glad that we were able to do it, even though it wasn't ideal or like Instagram. I think I did post like a picture of it, but I didn't post all the chaos, you know. But still, it's kind of that like remembering,
Hmm.
that not everything's gonna be perfect, but
Right.
it's us and it's our relationships that
Right.
um and
And
trying to
our view of perfection as
yeah.
parents is, it has hit certain standards, but for kids, I mean, we think back to our memories, and I bet if we think about some of our most precious memories with our family, with our friends,
Mm.
with our parents, like the adults in those situations were like, wow, I was totally a mess. Or like, yes, I gave you chicken nuggets because like I was tapped out. And we're like, that was the best. It was so much fun
Yes.
when we didn't have like the family meals. We just like had chicken nuggets and watched Wheel of Fortune, like all those things that we look back and we're like, that was awesome. Our parents may have a very different perspective on it. And I think that gives us as parents perspective to say, to your point about social media, like when we encapsulate things, we're thinking of all the things that didn't go right and how it wasn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. But for a kid, like those expectations don't exist, or they exist in a much different capacity.
Yes. Yes. Such good points. Yeah. And that's important for me to remind myself of that too. Yeah. Um, Now, Reena, you a big part of your population is that perinatal um period. Is there what would you recommend as far as kind of navigating that period? I remember just feeling so alone, and how helpful community is, but it's also was so hard, I think, at that time in my life to remember to do those type of things.
Mm-hmm. It it is very isolating, and our
Mhm.
as we talked about in our first podcast, we have set up our society in a bit of a isolationist um, sort of environment where, you leave the hospital, you leave the birthing center, even if you give birth at home, and then you're just kind of in your house with your partner, with your other family members. But this idea, like you said, of community, of a village is not there to the extent that maybe it has been in the past or it is for other cultures. And so, what does that mean for you if you're in the perinatal period or you're trying to conceive and you're thinking about growing your family? That postpartum experience is not just about the new baby, it's about a mother who's gone through a huge transformation, about a father who's gone through a huge transformation, other family members. And what is meaningful to you about that? It's not just the baby snuggles, although that is a big part of it. It's not just those. It's how do we take care of this person who has either birthed this child or has brought home this child, and this is a huge transformation. And so I encourage clients to think, what does self-care look like in the postpartum? And of course, don't know what you don't know, but talking to other moms, sometimes in this case, social media can be helpful of like, this is what I did to navigate the postpartum period, and connecting with yourself in sort of checking your emotions. Like, yes, we know the postpartum is like up and down and all over the place, and that is normal as our hormones regulate. But even with that, what brings you joy beyond holding your baby? Is it sitting with a cup of tea? Is it being outside because now it's finally warm out and we can just sit out on the porch, maybe? Things that are not just your identity as a new mother. Connecting with those in the early stages can help later on when it's starting to be a little bit more challenging to navigate a growing baby or a growing family, and you're like, oh, I also like to ski or I like to knit and I can't really do those things. If you start thinking about that in the early postpartum and try to connect with those things, that can be helpful. And also making sure that your support people know, like, I want to prioritize taking a shower, I want to prioritize having some time away from baby, so that even if it's just time to myself to heal.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. Yeah. And I think I remember like with my second and my third remembering those things a bit more, but also at the same time, I think it is the struggle of like I was always so concerned to really do anything other than like I don't know. It's hard because you're lacking sleep. There's all sorts of other things that are going on, and maybe just like also being like giving yourself grace too that this is the
Mm-hmm.
season, and 'cause, gosh, I like now that I'm like trying to remember it, I don't know if I really do remember all of that because it was such a day.
Whirlwind.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And so knowing that just a season, but also at the same time, kind of recognizing some things that may be helpful for you in that season
Mm-hmm.
as well. Hmm.
And I always encourage, whether it's through therapy, reading books, podcasts, whatever, the ability to check in with your emotions and validate them. A lot of times we look at emotions or we experience something and we say like, that's anxiety, or that's me being tired, which is not an emotion, but still, like that, those things, we put those headliners, but then what's underneath that? Like, you feel anxious. Are you scared? Are you resentful? Are you disappointed? There are all these things that actually exist under that. And so a lot of the work I'll do with clients is like, okay, let's what's the banner? Okay, I'm anxious. What's underneath that? What are you anxious about? What are the emotions that we can pull out of that until we get to the very bottom of the barrel and there is nothing that hits anymore? Like, okay, no, I'm not jealous. No, I'm not, feeling sad or scared. So what is that? And then validating that. A lot of times we
Mhm.
have a hard time, especially in a new postpartum experience, of being like, I'm just like really overwhelmed. Or I feel
Mhm.
like I have to do everything, or I have to feel a certain way, or I have to connect with my baby in a certain way. And sometimes that doesn't happen. That
Yeah.
doesn't make you a bad mom. That doesn't make you a bad parent. It means that you're having an emotional response to this huge transformation. And checking in with yourself is going to do a world of, or make a world of difference in your ability to say, okay, I don't feel as connected to my baby. I know I love my baby, but I don't feel as connected. And there's nothing that's not a reflection of you as a mother.
Mm.
That's where you are in that moment, and keeping an eye on it and the ability to regulate your emotions and validate them will help you determine, like, okay, is this something that I need to seek help for, or is this just a moment in time?
Yes, yes, that's a good point. Now, if you do feel like you need help, what would you recommend? Like, what's a good resource to have? I mean, um, we have our primary care providers we can always talk to, but any other resources you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, so if you're in the postpartum or anything related to obstetric gynecology, I would reach
Mhm.
out to your practitioner, your midwife, whoever you're seeing for obstetrics or gynecology, even if they're not able to, sort of support you emotionally. Hopefully, they have resources. The Perinatal Support Initiative International, PSI, they have
Mhm.
a list of providers in your state or your area, so you can always look that up. And also, I would also suggest, I mean, I think mom groups sometimes can be very supportive for asking questions like, hey, I'm
Mhm.
newly postpartum and I'm looking for a therapist, or I'm looking for a life coach, or I'm looking for someone to help me support my breastfeeding journey through lactation. That is a village. It's an online village, but still a village. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
them can have good resources for new moms or moms in general.
Okay. Well, that's great to know. And Reena, as we wrap up here, I want to give you the opportunity to tell our listeners where they can find you and also if there's anything else you'd like to leave with us today.
Sure. So I'm a clinician at Counseling Works. We have three locations, soon to be four. We're in Frankfurt, Lamont, and Naperville right now. I'm at the Frankfurt location for in person, but I also accept clients for telehealth.
Mm.
The list of insurances that I accept is on our website. And just in general, and therapy is becoming much more of a acceptable or permitted experience. It's part of sort of a half medical, half sort of just like it's okay to do therapy, and it's expected to do therapy, I think. And I think that makes it really, really good for people to be able to say, like, I'm going to therapy, I'm working on these things. But I guess the thing I would leave everybody with is not all therapists are made equal. Not every therapist is going to work for you. And so you, as the participant, as the person wanting to elicit some of these changes in yourself, um, don't be afraid to try different clinicians. Don't be afraid to say,
Mm.
like, I don't think this is working. That's okay. A good therapist is not going to be offended. And if they are offended, you shouldn't be with them anyway. But just that awareness and that empowerment and ownership of, like, this is your care, this is your journey. Like, not everybody is going to be a perfect fit, and that's okay.
Mm. That's such a good point. Yeah, I think that's and it is that important to know. I think sometimes, at least for me, like I get nervous, like, oh, is this okay? And like even sometimes, like with my, 'cause I see a therapist, and sometimes like I'll say something, and I'm like, I hope that didn't offend you. And then like they're always so helpful when they're like, no, like it's okay, like and to feel that kind of comfort, like to have that blanking on the word, but like if you mesh together,
Right. The
and
rapport,
yes,
certainly.
the rapport. Exactly. Yep. And um, well, that's wonderful, Reena. I really appreciate your time and sharing all this information with the audience. And as a mom yourself, I mean, I love being able to talk with other moms and support each other. And I just love everything you're doing. And thank you for all that you do for everybody.
Thank you so much. This was amazing to be a part of this. I'm super excited for you for doing this. I hope we can do more of them in the future.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate you for being able to be another voice for moms and to kind of look into the future and say, like, how are we going to support new moms, old moms, all the moms? Like, this is
Mhm.
something that we need. This, you're building a village for people that don't necessarily have one. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Yep. I really feel like moms, we need each other. We need to support each other. And I'm happy to do whatever I can to help make that happen. So I hope you have a wonderful day, Reena, and happy Friday. I hope you
You
have a
too.
wonderful weekend. I don't know where everyone is that's going to be listening or listening to the recorded session, but I think it's supposed to be a beautiful weekend. So get out there and enjoy the sun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reena.
Take care.
Thank you. You too. So I'm looking at the itinerary here. And so right now it is 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. And I believe I have Miss May Fekete coming up. May Fekete, she's a nurse practitioner. And so I'll give us a few minutes. Just see, it's not quite yet noon. So let me, oh, there is May right there. Do you want a few minutes, May, before we get started? Or are you okay? Oh, I think you're on mute.
It's up to you. I'm good. It's up to you. Can you guys hear
Okay.
me?
I can hear you. Yes, yes. And
Great.
yeah, if you want to just jump in, that would be great. And thank you so much for joining in.
Yeah, thank you. It's my pleasure. I'm really excited about this. So good for you for putting this on.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm so thrilled to be able to bring all of you guys together and to be able to share the incredible work you're doing. And May, I know you have been doing so much in your field. A fellow nurse practitioner, I saw your post on one of our nurse practitioner groups, and I'm like, I just need to talk with her and be able to talk about fasting and everything else that you're doing in the field of functional medicine and like preventative medicine.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, that was really awesome the way we were able to meet and kind of connect. So I love that.
Yes, absolutely. And I will post in a few minutes the where our listeners can find you in the chat here, as well as I'm just going to share a brief introduction in case people are not familiar with what you're doing, May. Um, so May Fekete, she is a family nurse practitioner who has over 25 years in the healthcare industry, and she's now a health coach. I'm sorry, she is now a health coach. I'm so used to doing podcasts where I can edit out like my things like that I say. So this live's a whole new thing. But yes, so again, nurse practitioner, 25 years in the healthcare industry, and now turned health coach. And May has been trained in the traditional allopathic medicine model, but she also has training in functional medicine. And she believes we all have the ability to heal our bodies once we figure out the root cause of our issues. Because of her passion for fasting, May started her own health and wellness company in hopes to teach people how to fast for disease reversal and or prevention, weight loss, peri and menopausal symptoms, increasing longevity, and general health and wellness. And that's just to name a few things that she's been doing. So definitely check her out. Again, I'm going to put the information in the chat, but also you can check her out on Instagram with the handle May_Fekete, FEKETE_health_and_wellness. So thank you so much, May.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I've been having all of our presenters say two truths and a lie just to get started. Didn't know if you had any that you wanted to share with us.
Okay, two truths. Let's see. I am a mom of twin boys, and I'm a military spouse. I lived in Alaska for several years, for 6 years, and loved it. And one lie, I've been to the moon.
Oh my gosh, that would be incredible if that was the truth.
I know. Well, you can do
Right?
that these days, so
Yeah, well, the solar eclipse and all of that. Yeah,
right.
recently
Really
that was,
exciting stuff.
yeah, yeah,
We didn't get to see much of it down where we are, so but it's
yes.
still amazing. But all the
Hmm.
pictures I see from my northern friends, I mean, their pictures are amazing.
Yeah, well, I guess in 20 years, I don't know, I'll have to confirm this, but I think it's supposed to be in Alaska. So, There you
Is
go.
it?
Even though
Okay.
I know you're not in Alaska now, you're in
Yeah.
Alabama, right?
Alabama, correct.
Yes, yes. But how is the weather out there? Is it
It's
nice?
beautiful.
Good.
We
Yeah,
have
spring's
sunshine
lovely.
today.
Hmm.
It's cool. It's 70 degrees. I mean, we've been having some really nice weather. So
Good.
I've been enjoying it.
This is my favorite time of year to be in the South, like all of the beautiful flowers and everything. Well, that's
Yes.
incredible.
Before
Uh,
the heat starts.
yes, before the heat starts, which I feel like what's it, May, really? I mean, or at least I remember in
Really.
Texas. Hmm.
About May, June is when it really starts. Mhm.
Yep, yep. Well, May, I want to get started with just a couple questions that I have for you, and for us to learn. So I have, but for my first question, what is the difference between functional and traditional medicine? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, a lot of people are just not familiar. Unless you're in the health and wellness space, you just really don't know. So, our traditional allopathic medicine model really looks at the symptoms and treating the symptoms. So, they don't look at the underlying cause. And that is one of the things that functional medicine does. They really specialize on looking under the hood, seeing why that symptom is happening. Because if you just treat the symptom and you don't treat the root cause, it's probably going to subside for a while, but then it's going to come back if you don't address the root cause. And that's really why I love functional medicine. It is more of a preventative as well, because we know that there are in the traditional model, for instance, with diabetes, you wouldn't necessarily get diagnosed with diabetes unless your A1C is beyond a certain number. But we can start looking at the A1C earlier and seeing if there's trends going upward where it's going to be leading into a diabetic state. And we can do something about it at that time. And it's this phase that people call, or the state, pre-diabetes, which I think is, it's kind of ridiculous. Let's just wait until you get diabetes to treat you instead of doing something beforehand to kind of prevent it. So functional medicine will look at those things and will try to make changes to kind of move the needle in the opposite direction and more of an optimal um, place where, with allopathic medicine, they just kind of look at a generalized population. Even with lab works, I explain to people that when you have blood work, it really accounts for the area that you're in. So it takes a sample of the comparison of the people that are in your area. So it could be different depending on where you are in certain parts of the country, but it doesn't necessarily mean that those labs are optimal. They might be within the normal range, but not optimal for good health and functioning. So that's
Yes.
really one of the main differences.
Mm. I remember in our podcast episode, you talked about like car maintenance. I thought that was such a good example of like if you're not getting the maintenance checked and all of that, and the
Yeah.
engine. I think that's a great
Yep.
example that everyone can understand.
Exactly. I mean, and you wouldn't treat your car that way. You
Yeah.
wouldn't just say, "Oh, I'm just gonna, jerry rig something so the engine light goes off," because it's gonna come back on at some point. So we want
Yes,
to do something to fix it so it doesn't come on.
absolutely. I actually used that example the other day with my husband because he's a big car guy. And I'm
Oh,
like,
is
you
it?
know what? It's like you wouldn't treat your car that way. I think I said that exact thing.
Exactly. But it's funny we treat our bodies this way. And our
Yes.
bodies are this one vessel that we have, and we have to take care of it for the rest of our lives. And everyone wants to live a healthy, functional life, right? You don't like, I would love to live to 100, but I don't want to be in a wheelchair where I can't do the things that I enjoy, with my children or even my grandchildren. So you want to really have a what I call health span as opposed to lifespan. So health span
Yes.
is living disease free, where lifespan is just the amount of years that you're going to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and May, can you tell us a bit about fasting? Like, I really think it's so interesting to learn. And you being a healthcare provider, I think that's such great information that you give about fasting and the benefits of fasting. So I'd love for you to share a bit more information about that.
Sure. So fasting is an underutilized tool, and it's really something that just about everyone can do. There are certain demographics that I wouldn't recommend it in, but most people can do it. And I think in the times that we're living in, where food is so accessible to all of us, and um, it's a societal thing, it's a culture thing. So for us just to give our digestive system a rest does so much that not a lot of people are even aware of. They kind of think, well, why would you starve yourself? But, your body wasn't meant to be eating 24 hours a day. And if
Yeah.
you look back, I think we talked about this in the podcast. If you look back to our ancestors, our primal ancestors, they weren't eating every day. They weren't eating every 2 or 3 hours. And they were eating when they had a hunt, and they would eat for a couple of days, and then they would fast for a couple of days when they didn't have anything else. And I really it took me a long time to kind of get over the fact that we were telling, in healthcare, we were telling people, especially diabetics, eat 6 small meals a day or whatever it was, where that was definitely not helpful at all. But at that time, we just didn't know. We didn't have a lot of this information. So it's really evolving. And I think more people are starting to understand that it is very, very powerful. Giving your body that digestive rest is a house cleaning for the body. So autophagy is one of those um, um, things that happens, that your body takes out the garbage. So it gets rid of these senescent cells, these cells that they call zombie cells that are going to turn into diseases. And you want to take that garbage out. Again, you wouldn't leave rotten, dirty garbage in your trash can in your kitchen. It's going to start to smell after a while. So you take it out. So
Mhm.
it's the same thing. The body does that. And it is really a process that is amazing once you start to really look at it and how it works, and is so beneficial for so many conditions. And I love to just talk about it. I could talk about it all day long. I talk about it all the time, and just I don't try to push people to it, but I just try to explain that there is something that you can do that really costs nothing. And
Mm.
it's just really educating yourself and trying it out and see how you do.
Yeah. And is that kind of along the same lines of like the gut microbiome as well, or does that a bit more complex?
Exactly. And that's really one of the things that fasting does. And that's why I love the 24-hour fast. That is one of my most favorite fasts that I recommend to everyone. If you do a 24-hour fast, if you can do it weekly, that helps to reverse and kind of assist that microbiome. And,
Mhm.
there's such a connection between the microbiome and, the gut brain access and all these diseases. I mean, people don't realize that 70% of our immune function is in the gut. So if you don't have a healthy gut, then you're wondering why the rest of your body is not healthy. You're developing all these rashes, all these conditions. You have to really look in the gut. And that's really what that 24-hour fast does. And
Mhm.
just doing that alone is extremely helpful, because we do need gut healing. Even those that have the best diets, whole foods, and try to stay away from processed foods, there's still things that we're exposed to every day that will affect our system. So we really need to focus on that gut.
Mm. Yes, that's so important. And I think it's incredible how we've learned so much about the gut over the past like decade or so. Like I don't think in NP school I learned much about it like at all. Like it was like it's a discovered organ because I mean I graduated a while ago, and so it's like it just the amount of information that keeps coming up I feel like is more and more supporting this fascinating new new organ we didn't really know. And like how you're saying 70% of our immune function is said now to be in the gut is just like fascinating.
Yeah.
um how would you, I guess I had two questions for you on that. How would you support your gut microbiome in addition like to fasting, it sounds like, and then also if we want to try something like a 24-hour fast, how do we go about doing that? Like what would be like the steps to do that type of fast?
Yeah, well, I like supporting the microbiome with the use of prebiotic foods, probiotics, and you can get a lot of those in fermented foods. You
Mhm.
know, bone broth, a really good quality bone broth is kind of essential. You know, I have that at my house at all times.
Mhm.
And that really has a lot of nutrients and a lot of other substances that will help heal that gut. So typically what I tell people to do is when they do a 24-hour fast and the focus is on that gut healing, you want to break the fast with some bone broth. So that
Mm.
is the first thing that you want, and you want to be able to get that to the gut where it needs to go, and just let those nutrients do what they need to do for the healing. And as far as the 24-hour fast, so a lot of people get a little bit apprehensive, I think, when they think about fasting. They're like, I can't live without food. How am I going to do this? I will die. And I'm here to tell you that you will not die. You know, there's people that I know that have fasted for longer than, 3 or 4 weeks, and certainly they did
Wow.
not die. But, you know, I usually don't get into all that. The longest I've done is a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. But,
Mm.
you know, I tell people to start with 13 hours and work your way up. You know, this is not a how do you say it? This is not
Oh, a sprint.
a sprint, it's a
Uh-huh.
marathon. So you want to pace yourself, you know, and there's really you're just trying to achieve the goal that you set. You know, it's not like there's a right way or a wrong way. So if you start with 13 hours and you work your way up, you'll really start to notice how your body really adapts, you know,
Mm.
and you'll realize that your cravings start to decrease. You know, you're not held captive to food, because a lot of times we're eating not just to for nutrient purposes, but we're eating because we're emotional eaters. You know, there's other things going on. There's a lot to it. So when you think about taking out that food and you're just going to focus on other things, you know, you realize that you don't need it. You know, you can replace it. Like I tell people when they're fasting and they're thinking about food and they're getting hungry, because the hunger pangs are going to come, but they're temporary. You just go out for a walk or do something that you enjoy. You know, listen to
Mhm.
music, go take a light yoga class, you know, something just to get your mind off the fact that you're hungry, because
Mm.
that is the normal response of the body, and it's going to be telling you that, but it's not that you need to eat because you're going to die if you don't.
Mm. Mhm. Mhm.
So I think once people understand that, then, you know, then they're like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Now, with diabetics, if you're on insulin, a little bit different, but I do advise that most people have a glucometer that are diabetic, so they're checking their blood sugars, but there is no reason for people that are using insulin or oral hypoglycemics to not be able to fast. Obviously, you know, you want the support and guidance of your provider, but there is no reason why. And that actually will help to um, fix some of the issues that you have within your metabolism. So your blood sugar should stabilize.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's all really interesting. And I know, well, you have a couple groups that a Facebook group as well, right? Where you can where you sometimes will do fasting sessions where people can participate in it for accountability. Is that right?
Yes, because that's the big thing. You know, if you're doing things in a community, it's
Hmm.
typically easier than just doing it by yourself, because a lot of times we are okay with letting ourselves down, but we don't want to let other people down.
Yeah.
So if you have a community of people that are doing it with you, it's usually helpful.
Mm, yes, that's great. And I posted the link to the Facebook group.
Okay.
And those of you who are listening in that may not be live after the recording, I can also post that information as well. And I want to ask you too, because I think this is a good point when just thinking about the microbiome and all of that, about mood and diet. Like it seems to be that really we are discovering more and more that the brain and the body are so connected together. And what types, because I think sometimes it's easy for me especially as I think about like me getting older and I want to do all of these things for external things, but that's not really what the point of it is. The point of it is for, feeling better, feeling more energized and, becoming stronger, those type of things. So I was just curious, how can that help, like, with your mood and with everything else?
Well, fasting definitely helps to regulate hormones.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And specifically, with mood altering hormones, the 48-hour fast it increases your dopamine receptors. So that is one thing that a lot of people really would benefit from, especially these days. Mental health is such an issue and we all struggle with it, even
Yeah.
providers. So the 48-hour fast is definitely one that I would recommend for that. But just in general, fasting helps to regulate the hormones. And, along with all the benefits, like there's people that do it for weight loss benefits, for menopause, perimenopause, what have you, for
Hmm.
reversing diabetes, for preventing diabetes. You also have
Hmm.
to look at, increasing the longevity. There's a lot of
Yeah.
studies that have been done. And one of the people the doctors that I follow, Dr. Walter Longo, he's been studying longevity for the past 20 years.
Hmm.
So really, that is one of the bigger benefits aside from all these other things. But increasing longevity is something that should be a goal for everyone.
Yeah.
And with that, once you heal the inside of your body, then that will reflect on the outside, right? Most people will have clearer skin once they heal their gut. They're not going to have, psoriasis and all these other issues that they had. Now, I will say it does take time. A lot of people
Hmm.
will say, well, I fasted, for 48 hours and my rash isn't gone. I still have psoriasis. And I say, well, fasting is not a diet, but it's a
Hmm.
lifestyle. And you have to look at it that way. You can't just say, well, I'm going to do this diet for 2 or 3 days and it's going to cure all my ailments. Because
Mm.
certainly it is very, very powerful. And I've known people to heal even old injuries with a 72-hour fast, water fast.
Wow.
So yeah, but it does involve some commitment on the client side. So it's not something that you're just going to notice right away. But
Hmm.
there are people that just getting off the eating for several times a day will notice an improvement, even in their brain health, even in their moods, just overall feeling better. And then they start to kind of decide that they're going to make healthier food choices. That's another thing, because a lot of people that are in the fasting lifestyle, health and wellness space, they're not going to necessarily eat, trash for a couple of days, knowing that they have a fast coming up, and then that fast is going to take care of what they just did. So you start to kind of change your pattern of eating and the way you look at food. And that is something that comes with time. That's not something that happens overnight. So I really stress that with my clients, that it's not going to be something that you're just going to do one time and you're going to notice some changes.
Yes. Yes. I think that's a good point. Hmm. Yeah. Keeping
And I
that.
hope that answered your question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think that's like a good, just, I keep thinking of that car, like, and like keeping that
The
car
car.
maintenance and all of that, like it's all, I think that's incredible that the amount of, I'm just thinking about how it's all connected. And I think for so long, we just didn't think that was the case. And the fact that what I'm eating can affect how I'm feeling. And I don't know, I remember when I first started learning about anxiety, I think I was skeptical of that type of stuff, not just anxiety, but like, I just remember trying to look up more information about mental health. And it's like, oh, why would diet affect that? But it makes so much sense. And the more we, or the more that I work on it, the more I feel like now it's on the forefront of my mind when I go to the grocery store and when I'm trying to be like, I'll shop the perimeter more. Not to say that I'm always doing that. Sometimes, I don't know, sometimes
We're human, it
embracing
happens.
imperfection there. Yeah. And yeah, it's like everything in moderation, I feel like
Right.
sometimes too. Um, but that's great. Now, May, as we wrap up here, I would love for you to, share with our listeners where they can find you, what type of stuff that you're doing with your company, as well as anything that you'd like to leave with us.
Yeah, so the best way to reach me is on my Instagram, and it's May Fekete Wellness Fekete Health and Wellness, and there's an underscore after each word. And then they can also reach me at health@mayfekete1.com. I really just want people to understand that they have more control over their bodies than they think that they do. And a lot of times, it's just a matter of educating people, making them understand that they have to be advocates for their own health. They have to be the ones that say, I don't think that that's the right path for me and for my body. And really stand up for yourself and speak up. And even if it's to a provider, if you have a good provider, just like we were talking about the counseling session previous, if you have a good provider, they're going to be open to listen to you. If not, then you probably need to find a new one.
That's a good
And,
point.
they have to understand that it's not just a one-sided conversation. You're the patient. You have to be involved in it. And you have more of an authority than you think that you do. So that is the main point that I want people to understand, that you definitely have that control over your body and decisions that are made, and definitely advocate for yourself.
Mm. I remember the title I made for our episode was Becoming the CEO of Your Body. And I think you had mentioned that like in the episode itself. And I think that is so important because we really are. And I think sometimes it's we forget that we can advocate for ourselves. And I do think that's such a good point about healthcare providers. Like it's a relationship between the two of us. It's not just like a one way.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yes, yes, that's incredible. Well, May, thank you so much for joining in today. I really appreciate your time, and I know that we have a few a few extra minutes. If anyone has any questions for May, the only other question I have for you, May, is that I would like to have some Alaska travel recommendations because I
Oh,
want to
sure.
travel. I want to go to Alaska to travel sometime.
Okay. Yeah, definitely reach out. It needs to be on everyone's bucket list, at least twice,
Yes.
in the summertime and in the wintertime.
Oh, really? In the winter, so
Yes.
you would recommend it in the wintertime?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Okay, that's good to know. But like, can you do dog sledding? I want to do that
Oh,
sometime.
sure. Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, you can catch the aurora. I mean, it's gorgeous. You have
Oh,
to go in the wintertime. Now, the summertime is great too. And I advise people to go, 2 times. But
mm-hmm.
in the wintertime, I mean, it's just like a magical place. It's just so
Mm.
beautiful, and it's like a postcard. That's what I tell people. Just like those postcards that you see with the mountains and the snow and the, lights in the background. That's exactly how it is.
Oh, beautiful. Yes. Someday I will go there.
Yeah.
And cruise or not cruise or both. Like if you
You could
could.
probably do both. Yeah,
Okay.
cruises are great. If you want to definitely explore more of the state, I would say, no cruise, but because the cruises don't go up to Fairbanks, and that's a nice part of Alaska too.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. Well,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, a
Yeah.
little bit of Alaska tourism here too.
Exactly. I better be getting a commission.
Yeah, really. Well, feel free to reach out to May for any Alaska
Yes.
questions. But
Any fasting or Alaska questions, feel free to
yes,
reach out.
there you go. Yes. Well, May, I hope you have a wonderful weekend and happy Friday and enjoy the beautiful weather out there.
Yes, you too. Thank you for having me. We'll talk soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, May.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. Great. So I think looking at our schedule now, we will have Aaron Washburn. He'll be coming on pretty soon. It is about 12:25 right now, Central Standard Time. So he'll be coming on in about 5 minutes at 12:30 Central Standard Time to talk with us about the mind and body and a bit about hypnosis as well. So I'm super excited about that. And so I will just have us take a 5 minute break and then we'll come back at 12:30 or whatever time it is for you guys, but 12:30 Central Standard Time. Thanks so much.
Hey, Valerie, and everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. I'm very excited for talking with you today.
Yes, I am thrilled to have you. And I know that you were here earlier this morning, and I just really appreciate everything that you're doing for. And you started working with nurses originally, but also working with moms and just with a variety of population on the gift that you have to talk about the mind and the body. And I just love talking with you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I did start out with nurses, and since our conversation, especially with your podcast being towards moms, it opened up my capacity to hold for more people because they need this, they really do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am going to give you a introduction real quick, and then we'll get started with some questions. And then also, as you're talking, I'll put into the show notes ways that we can find you as well.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Great. So we have for the title of your talk here, Emotional Regulation with Erin Washburn, CCH. And tell us, Erin, what does CCH stand for?
CCH is a certified consulting hypnotist.
Great. That's very exciting. I'm excited to talk with you about that. So, Erin Washburn, CCH, is a hypnotist and body language translation specialist, pioneering a return to the natural way of healing. Erin's journey, marked by overcoming depression and sciatica pain after his mother's, who was a nurse, passing, fuels his passion to guide others towards transformation. Erin works with healthcare professionals to reduce and reverse burnout, teaching them emotional regulation, utilizing the mind and body connection, and helping them feel more heard, seen, and loved. Through his mastery of these techniques, he empowers individuals to tap into their innate ability to restore balance and harmony in their mind and body, causing a positive shift in the healthcare paradigm and humanity. And also, we did a few episodes together, so I'll drop a link for that as well in the show notes. And well, I guess in the chat. I'm so used to saying show notes because I'm always doing these podcasts. uh, which I was saying earlier, I was like messing up some words, and I'm like, oh, I can't edit myself out on these lives. So used to editing out all my ums and my likes and all of that. But you were the one, Erin, that first did a Instagram live with me, which was really awesome.
I did. Yeah, that was really good.
Yes. Yeah, I love collaborating with you. So, Erin, tell us, I've been asking everyone that has been presenting so far, 2 truths and a lie
All
about
right.
yourself.
No, it took me some time to come up with it, and I still couldn't. So I was just like, let's just see what comes up naturally.
There you go.
So 2 truths and a lie. All right. So let's say I used to be a professional singer. Okay. And there's one time where I meditated for about an hour and had this huge divine surge of energy go through my body, and I was just high off of life. Okay. And recently I was having a talk with somebody that has 17 years of migraines, and I had one talk with him, and she no longer has it anymore. So you guys can figure out which one is the lie.
I kind of hope you're a singer, but I don't know. Can you sing?
Me too. No, I wasn't a professional singer.
Dang it. One of the little
I almost
concert
wanted to be
here.
one because my mom loved watching the show American Idol, but
Oh,
every time
yeah.
I tried, it was bad. It was bad. So we don't want that.
Yeah, my kids tell me not to sing either, but
Just in the shower.
Yeah, I play the flute, so I could stick with the flute at least, but I always wanted to do singing. Always wanted
You're
to.
really good at it.
I thought about bringing my flute in for like little interludes in between, but I'm like, no, don't do it, Valerie. Don't
That
do
should
the
be
flute.
really calming and nice. I would love
You
that.
think so? Well, next
Yeah.
time, stay tuned for that. Little
Yes.
flute performances in between speakers.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Well, Erin, so tell us about just there's so much I would like to talk with you about, but what I want to start out with first is What are some ways you recommend for us to work with strong emotions? Because I feel like so many of us have them. I know I do, where it just, I want to react in a certain way, but sometimes it's just so hard to do that.
Yeah, that's a very strong question in the beginning. I loved it. Strong emotions. The first thing I always like to say with working with strong emotions is to familiarize with them. We have this first reaction to kind of just analyze our thoughts of what's creating the emotions versus just familiarizing and observing where the emotions show up in our body. And instead of distracting ourselves away from not feeling these strong emotions, we actually can allow it to feel it inside of our body. And the more we feel those strong emotions, we then become the observer of the emotions versus the identity of the emotion. And each time that you do that, you'll familiarize it with so much that when anger comes back, you're like, hey, welcome back, anger. How can I be here for you? What's going on? You know, through my own experience up until I started dating my fiance now, when you're in a relationship, she gives you like this plate. Everybody gives you the plate of all your flaws and your reactions and your triggers. And there are times when I wanted to leave her, but I realized that I wasn't leaving her. I was leaving myself because I didn't want to confront these reactions and these triggers and all that. So it was to a point where I was expressing more anger because she was allowing me to express. And I'm like, wow, I'm being mean. And I had never really expressed anger before since my mom passed away up until, the last 4 years. And I expressed it 2 times and it just completely controlled me. And I'm like, there's gotta be something here. I'm gonna do better. So I told her, hey, I'm not gonna do this again. I'm gonna work really hard to not do it again. I have to walk away. So you know that. Each time I did that and I held space for it for at least 90 seconds, give myself permission to feel anger in my body and it's okay. Each time I did that, when the anger came back, I had more control over the anger versus anger having control over me. Now, each time anger comes back, I'm like, oh, welcome back, anger. What's going on? How can I be here for you? And I just observe it in my body. And sometimes I don't say anything. Sometimes I just feel it. And then some memories will come up in my mind's eye. So with strong emotions, start familiarizing with them so much that then you create a relationship with that emotion, right? And then you're not scared anymore. You're not scared to express these strong emotions because you're inviting them inside your body versus trying to push them away. Because the more you push them away, the more you disconnect from yourself. And that's where a lot of people are disconnected from themselves because they don't know what they're feeling. So that's always my recommendation, to step into your courage and feel those feelings, hold space for it, and do that each time that happens. And then you'll eventually notice that these emotions aren't taking control over you anymore. You're having more control over these emotions by becoming the observer versus the identity of them.
That's so, yeah, I love it. And I know you talk, Erin, about the example, or I guess I'm blanking on the word, but like the illustration of a child, and like if they run up to you, you embrace them, you don't turn your back on them. And I think that's so powerful.
Yes, that's absolutely right. I have a 2-year-old. If she runs up to me and she's expressing her feelings, I'm not going to be like, hey, what's going on? The first response that we have is just to give them a hug. And if I were to turn my back on her multiple times, she's then not going to feel safe to express herself to me. So then after maybe 10 times that I didn't hold space for her, I come back and I'm like, hey, you can feel your feelings now. She's gonna be like, and give me the side eye. I don't trust you anymore. It's been so long. We do that the same way in our own body. So whenever we're triggered, we're literally seeing life through the lens of that version of ourselves that was hurt. That version of ourselves that was hurt, right? So our nervous system will filter out everything that we're not and everything that we are. It will filter in everything that we are. For example, I was having dinner with Chantel the other night, or actually a couple months ago, and I don't know what I thought of to give hot sauce to my daughter, and she's like, "No, don't do that. She's not gonna like it." So I gave her the hot sauce, and I still did it. And she's like trying to scrape her tongue off, and she's like, and then Chantel was still talking the way she normally does. But in that moment, I literally was so triggered that it felt like I was 7 years old, and Chantel became like a threat. Like, she's bullying me, she's pointing at me, even though she wasn't doing any of this. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I was in that state. I was like angry. I'm like, I was being mean to her, not like verbally or anything, but I was just pushing her away. And I was like, you know what? I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to the bathroom. So I went to the bathroom. I regulated my feelings. I was crying, and I came back, and then I was back into seeing life through the filter of my current version of myself, my present self. Um, so whenever we give ourselves permission to feel our feelings, after it's been like 10, 15 years of not feeling it, it's going to feel weird. You're going to feel resistance because that version of yourself that you've been pushing away for so long is like your 2-year-old daughter that you've been pushing away for so long. So the moment you say, I give myself permission to feel my resistance in feeling my feelings and it's okay, that is the moment where it like unlocks the chest of all the emotions and it just starts pouring in. And I'll let you know what to do when that happens, because that's when most people need the most mentorship after that.
So what do you do when that happens?
When the chest box opens up of all these emotions, remember that emotions, my definition of it, I'm sure I got this from somewhere, so I choose to remember, is emotions are energy in motion. So when you're not feeling your emotions, it's just stuck energy in your body, and your body holds the trauma. So um, this, I was doing a TikTok live the other day, and I have these, I love quotes, Valerie. So I have this new quote,
Yeah.
and it just makes more sense. It's and I'm sure someone said this before in the past, the memories live in the past, but your body experiences it in the present.
Oh, I
So
like that quote. It's a good
yeah, the
one.
memories live in the past, but your body experiences it in the present. So even if you're thinking about a future outcome, even if you're holding the image of your mind in your mind's eye, no matter what image is held in your mind, you're gonna feel it in your body. So that's why whenever some people talk about their past trauma over and over again, your body's experiencing it, but without regulating that past trauma, you're gonna recondition your body to feel that same pain over and over again because it's reliving that experience. So um, when we're triggered, we're seeing life through the lens of that version that was hurt. We have the opportunity to be the parent to that child that child needed during that time. And it goes over these 3 concepts, with concept number 1 being our mind. And our body doesn't know the difference if we're in the future or in our past. It just knows now. So when we access that memory from that strong trigger, we then can close our eyes and literally see that version of ourselves that just wanted to be seen, heard, and loved. There's a lot of nuances here too. So seeing, heard, and loved, I started realizing why we do that, because it's 3 senses that we most likely needed during that time where our parents couldn't give us that. So we either need to be seen, or we needed to be heard, or we needed to be felt. We needed to be held onto. So when you're able to do that, here's another quote. It's not our past experiences that made us who we are today. It is how we recorded our past experiences that made us who we are today. So when you change the recording of that memory, it changes your personality, and then changes your person reality, because it changes our filter system of our nervous system. So once I overcome that past trauma by regulating those feelings, then concept number 3 is the butterfly effect. We no longer have triggers and reactions that no longer serve us anymore. We then have the responsibility, which is your ability to respond to events that remind you of your past in a new way versus reacting the same ways you did last year, which gets you the same results next year. So once you regulate that past trauma, that's when you literally open the box of all these emotions. And now your body's online. Your body's communicating with you, which is your body's going to go back into energy and motion. When you regulate your emotions, you're regulating your nervous system. And now that we have these flood of emotions coming up that I had depression for 8 years after my mom passed away. I depressed for a long time. Now it's all coming up. Most people think that with these emotions coming up, that they think that there's something broken or wrong with them, but that's not the truth. It's just a past version of yourself that wanted to be seen, heard, and loved, or a version of yourself that's no longer in alignment with who you are becoming, and who you want to be. So in those moments, that's when you start to learn these tools and techniques to be able to hold space for what works better, personalized for each person. Hold space for those emotions and just know that you're not broken. It's just a past version of yourself that wants to be seen, heard, and loved. And what happens is when that chest box of emotions come up after dealing with one past trauma, your body's gonna be ready to regulate some more. So what I always like to say after doing this with myself and with other people is that if they overcome past trauma and they're now feeling more heard, loved, and seen, their new experience is to now experience more of feeling more heard, loved, and seen. So if they went from depression to feeling more heard, loved, and seen, experience that new experience now in your heart. don't try to go back to healing. So then when the emotions come up, that's when you heal that. And then you're just gonna keep going up. Your emotional baseline is gonna start changing and rising from depression all the way up to enlightenment, joy, and all that you experience. So that's what I do when these emotions come up, is knowing that it's not the world trying to attack you. It's not the enemy trying to attack you. It's just your old world is falling apart when these emotions come up. And these experiences are hyper focused because we're given the opportunity to hear, see, and love that past version of ourselves. And that's why we become reactive. That was a lot, but
No, that's so helpful. It reminds me of your other quote that you've said that I love: the feelings buried alive never dies. And that's such a good one.
yes, feelings buried alive never die. Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I think that's so profound. Can you repeat all your quotes so far? Because I really like quotes too.
Yeah, the first quote that I said was our memories live in our past, but our body experiences it in our present.
Okay. Yep.
And then the other one was, it is not our past experiences. You can say past trauma, but I'm reframing that, because trauma is a very triggering word. It's not our past experiences that made us who we are today. It is how we recorded them that made us who we are today. And when you change the recording, it changes your personality. And we know this, for example, if someone's driving and they get hit and they had a really strong brain trauma there, and it wipes out that part of their brain that holds the memories, they're in the hospital, their family comes in, oh my God, dad, are you okay? And the dad doesn't have those memories anymore because he had that brain trauma. He's like, who are you? And they act like a completely different person. They don't remember who they are. So we can reframe our past memories so much that the same way I did with my mom when she passed away was when I saw my mom take her last breath at 17 years old. I was depressed for 8 years. But 4 years ago, when I went through this process that came to me that I'm teaching, is I was in that memory from that strong trigger of being depressed. I walked up to that version of myself and I gave him exactly what he needed during the time where my dad couldn't. So I see you, I hear you, and I love you. I had that inner dialogue with myself. It's not your fault. Your dad couldn't do anything. You're allowed to grieve over your mom. I gave myself a hug. And then I just held him. And then after that moment, I then looked into his eyes. He went from depression to sadness, to feeling lost, to feeling heard, loved, and seen, and felt compassion and was okay finally to grieve over my mom. From that moment, I emotionally re-recorded that memory. And that's why every time I share it with you, that's what I'm seeing now. So now that I'm seeing that version of myself, literally talking to myself while my mom was taking her last breath, we all came together and I kissed my mom in the forehead and said, be at peace, I love you. Then now when I see that memory, it's different. It's different now. So when I took care of that memory and I reframed it, re-recorded it, I no longer had depression and I no longer had left side sciatica pain that I had for 8 years after my mom passed away, because there's a lot of psychosomatic things that go on in our body. So that is what happens when you re-record these memories. It has to change your chemistry in your body, your personality, because it's the law of cause and effect. If that memory was creating a personality from what we held in that meaning from that memory and we changed it, then by law of cause and effect, we'll go from a negative symptom into a positive symptom. So I forgot what your question was, but I think I answered it there.
Yeah. Yeah. Just to repeat your quote. So yes,
Yeah,
definitely. Yes. Yeah. Now, Erin, I would love to hear some more about hypnosis. I don't know much about it. I know we talked about it briefly in our last podcast episode, but can you share with us a bit about that?
Yeah, hypnosis is a heightened sense of suggestibility and focus, right? So if you think about the brainwave states, we got the beta, we got the alpha, we got the theta, and then the delta. So basically, what hypnosis is, we relax your mind so much that when your mind relaxes, your body relaxes. Sometimes I go for the body first, and then I have the mind relax. But when you relax it so much, you shift in different brainwave states, and in the theta state is a state where you're more open and more suggestible to suggestions. So like right when you go from sleeping to waking up, you go from delta to theta. If I told you to do something, you're most likely going to do it because you're just waking up and you're like, oh yeah, sure. So with hypnosis, we enter that theta brainwave state, and in that state, more people are open up to suggestions that better serve them versus the old patterns. So hypnosis is a way to rewire your subconscious and to get into that state where if you're having a lot of things to do throughout the day, you're having all these thoughts and you're trying to change an old pattern that no longer serves you, we can't really do it from that state. We have to get you down into a theta state so that way those thoughts aren't distracting you, you're not thinking about them, and now you just have a blank canvas. So everything that I say after becomes like my words start creating images in your head, like the dog or the cat is running and jumping over the car. I'm sure you guys saw the cat was running and jumping over the car right now. And basically, I just put you in a light trance right there, being able to see that. Even as I'm talking right now, because this is conversational hypnosis as well. For those that are in deep rapport with me, you guys are my conversation is flowing so much that you're in that trance. You might not even notice some noise that's going outside or that's going on. So hypnosis gives us the power of our mind back to be able to make changes and create new neural pathways.
I love that. That's so interesting because I think of hypnosis and like, I don't know, like all of the stuff from like the old shows and all of that of with magicians and all, but I think it's an interesting perspective. And I think that is so powerful, and how you explain it in that way, where it is like just you're using your brain in a different, not even in a different way, but a more focused way. And I think that's so interesting. And like, I just love that you're doing that and educating us on what hypnosis really is, and it makes me think about when time ceases to exist, when I'm doing something I love. And I think we talked about that in the last episode, but like, is that a form of hypnosis then? Like if I'm doing something that I really love and I don't know that, a couple hours has passed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
so.
I mean, even if the best hypnotists in the world are movie actors, right? Because when you're watching a movie and your husband's like, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? But you're so like absorbed in the movie, that's called negative hallucinations right there, where you can't hear your husband yelling at you to do something. So movies are really, they put you in trance. Marketing techniques put you in trance. When you're driving to the same place every single day and you forget how you get there, that's hypnosis. That's road hypnosis. And one of the powerful examples of hypnosis too is when you walk into your doctor's office. They have a white coat on, and if it's somebody that doesn't know, what's going on in their body, and they walk in there and someone has a white coat on, they have such a strong authoritative figure that anything that they say comes out of their mouth, that person is most likely going to accept it because they're in trance when they walk into the doctor's office. Anybody that holds a high level of authority, and you trust them so much, that's why you got to be careful with the words that you say, because they can accept those suggestions even if it is a misdiagnosis, because there's a lot of cases on that, or even if it is something that don't serve them, because you essentially are what you believe. As you think of it in his heart, so are you. So whatever you believe, you can believe in the spiritual stuff, you can believe in the medical stuff, whatever you choose to believe in, that becomes your reality. So hypnosis is literally just that term to be able to put you in a state of complete focus, and then you say a suggestion and they accept it, and it influences them to do something. We're hypnotized like 7 times a day, and honestly, for me, since I've been studying emotions, anytime you're emotional, you're hypnotized, because if I'm having a conversation with you and we're having it like a session and you start feeling emotional, that emotion is going to bring you back to a past memory. So now you're inside of that memory as I'm talking to you presently here right now. Or if you go home and, I work with a lot of nurses, if they go home and share, or they're having a conversation with their family, but they're thinking about what happened at work, they're not here, they're in trance. They're actually back in the hospital during their shifts, and they're in trance right there. So anybody that gets emotional, they're immediately in trance. And that's when I start, you get to use something which most therapists call, I believe, is parts therapy. You get to talk to that version of yourself, which you can call parts therapy, you can call it inner child healing, whatever you want to call it. But you talk to that version of yourself because you literally are there, because you're emotional, you're triggered. So that's why whenever you're triggered, you see that version, you're seeing life through that version of yourself that was hurt. You're in trance. You're that 7-year-old self. So there's so many forms of ways that we're hypnotized that we just don't realize it. And now we just have this misconception of it's a stage hypnotist where they're making you quack like a duck, or the movies of Get Out, it's where she hits that teacup and you're under trance. But really what it is you just got to learn the mind and body connection. And once you do and get away from hypnosis being such a woo-woo thing, you're gonna have
Mhm.
some profound experiences in your life.
That's really fascinating. I love that. And Erin, I know you, like we were saying at the beginning, you started to work with nurses. Can you just share with us? I think it's just so special, like, because your mom was a nurse,
Mhm.
and what motivated you with your mission to work with nurses and their emotions? Does it have something to do with your mom being a nurse as well?
Absolutely. At first, I didn't realize that when
Mm-hmm.
my mom passed away. For 8 years after she passed away, I was going back and forth on teaching nurses to how to lose weight. I was an online fitness trainer for them, and it just became more than that. After I told you that the truth of that two truths and one lie,
Yeah.
I did meditate for an hour, not realizing the benefits of it. Then I had the surge of energy go through my body,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's why I feel like it was my mom. And then I feel like I was birthed again. Like I had my second, like I woke up again, and I was high off life. Got hit with depression again a week later, and that was that process, the three concepts that I talked about that I went through. And once I learned that, I'm like, maybe I can start practicing, because I got so passionate about it. If I was able to overcome my sciatica in just this moment, that this was psychosomatic, then I'm sure that there's something here. And then I was like, I'm high off of life. This is gonna be for me forever. And no, I went through those waves of emotions. I had to continue learning it to be able to make it make sense for other people to do this for themselves as well, because I'm certified nurses right now as well. And I had to learn that so many times to where I can easily explain it. That's why I really love the quote, the memories live in the past, but your body experiences it in the present. So as I was starting to teach this to other nurses, I was starting to see that they're feeling more heard, loved, and seen. And then when I was doing that, I was just stepping into more of my passion of why I'm here on this earth. They started feeling more heard, loved, and seen so much that they weren't feeling reactive anymore. They're sleeping better. Um, I had a psych nurse that had knee pain for 30 years, and in one session, her knee pain was gone on her left side. She
Mm.
was moving better, and the patients, like especially as a psych nurse, if the patients are just like in their emotional state, and just her reactions were a lot different. She was able to respond to it in a new way, so much that these patients start to feel more heard and loved and seen. This is where it becomes really powerful and how to shift the healthcare paradigm. They start feeling more heard, loved, and seen in a way that they haven't in a long time. And it's nothing on any healthcare professional's fault, because you're seeing this every single day. So you get to be, or you then start becoming desensitized to the emotions at work from seeing all these things that happen. But these patients still want to be heard, seen, and loved in some way. And once you start feeling more heard, loved, and seen, it caused that butterfly effect, to where once that patient is heard, loved, and seen so much that they feel empowered to regulate their feelings, that the next person that's angry at them, they touch their anger with love. And then that person touches anger with love. That person touches anger with love. So this is what I mean by shifting the healthcare paradigm, because everything starts and ends with a feeling. If I can help you reconnect to your burning passion of fire why you became a nurse, especially for the seasoned nurses, then you start to have a new sense of fiery passion in your body, where you're touching these lives in a new way. And then, in most cases, 90% of physical symptoms are stress induced. And when you regulate your emotional stress, you regulate your nervous system, they come back to the hospital a lot less, not being on a subscription of medication. So much that, or not professional, but the healthcare industry doesn't want to hear that, because they're making money off of it, but that's for another topic. But they're coming back a lot less, and it's shifting the healthcare paradigm. It's more nurses are reducing burnout because they're feeling more heard, loved, and seen. And then these people are now feeling more heard, loved, and seen, learning about the mind and body connection so much that it shifts humanity as well. So the purpose of this has become much bigger than what I thought it was. And we're just literally one person can change the world, because it starts and ends with a feeling. So when I keep doing that, the nurses see a lot of patients throughout the day, so much that they become that person of influence, then it seriously shifts like the emotional state from fear and depression or whatever it is, all the way up into a higher vibrational state that equals your emotional state. So that is how I started working with nurses, and I became so passionate about it because there's a huge nursing shortage that's going on right now, and they don't have the tools to be able to regulate their emotions, and sometimes they have to wait for months to be able to talk to a therapist. I'm not a therapist, so make sure you talk to your medical provider, because none of the things that I do it replaces it. However, you do get that level of support where the healthcare system is not giving you.
Mm. That's so important. And I think you're really creating that ripple effect, Aaron. And I think that dropping that pond or that pebble into the pond, I truly see that. And I know your mom would be so proud of you. I know she is so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. As we wrap up here, Aaron, I would love for you to just share where we can find you. I included in the show notes or the chat your links, but just let us know where we can get in touch with you and learn more.
Absolutely. So in that link that you have, it has my website on there as well. Like for nurses that want to take to be able to help them reduce and reverse burnout, I think a good next step for them is either to get the ebook that I have on there to teach you my process, and to even take it to the next level too. I have a course for them. It's a membership course where we meet about once a month. In that course teaches you how to regulate your feelings, where feelings show up in your body. Most people don't know where they show up in their body. And in that, you also get a session with me as well. So it's a good step to take if you want to start helping yourself reduce and reverse burnout in a new way, and get access to that membership. So that's in my course. And then all my contact info is on there. And I have the website on there as well, where you can listen to the podcasts that I've been on and even check out our podcasts that I see that you put in the show notes. So that's how you can get in contact with me. Just click that link that you put in there. And I appreciate you for doing that.
Well, thank you so much, Aaron. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy Friday, and I hope you have a lovely weekend.
You too. Thank you so much, Valerie. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And I'll be back on for the rest of the year. So I'll be in the
Great.
back.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Valerie.
Yes, thank you. Well, have a
You're welcome.
wonderful day, Aaron. Look forward to chatting with you on the chat box for this afternoon.
Yeah, I'm going to move back into the chat box.
Sounds good.
Goodbye.
Great. And I think Armi Grace, here she is. She's right here. And I'm so glad you're able to join, Armi Grace.
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Yes. Thanks for being here.
Glad to be here.
Yes, I am just thrilled. I really have been enjoying this whole day of just so many experts, thought leaders, and I love, Armi Grace, like what you're doing for moms. And I actually had no idea that occupational therapists can be with moms. Like I was like, this is an incredible concept, and I would love for you to share with our listeners more information about that. But first, what I'll do is I'll give like an introduction so people can learn a bit about you, and then we'll get started with my questions, if that works for you.
Sure. Sorry, you cut off a little. Do you want me to intro
sorry.
or did you have an intro ready?
I have an intro here, unless you want an intro. I have an intro ready.
Oh no, you go right ahead.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I have here for the title, Occupational Therapy for Moms with Armi Grace Petersen. And Armi Grace is a licensed and registered maternal infant occupational therapist. Her amazing practice, Motivated OT Mama, is located in the southwest suburbs of Chicago and offers one-on-one in-home and telehealth services, webinars, as well as group classes. And you can follow Armi Grace on Instagram with the handle Motivated OT Mama, as well as check out our website, www.motivatedotmama.com. And I'll put those links into the chat, as well as the link to our podcast episode that we had done. And feel free to drop any questions that you have for Armi Grace in the chat below. So again, thanks so much for being here. And I've been having everyone who's been presenting tell us 2 truths and a lie. Is there anything you'd like to share with us?
Sure. I was born in the Philippines. I don't know how to swim, and I've been to Vegas 3 times.
Oh, I don't know. Were you born in the Philippines?
I was, yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Which one's the lie?
Well, you have 2 left. Which one?
Okay, let me Vegas.
No, yes, that is the lie. I've actually been to Vegas 7 times.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great. I'll be going there soon too. But we're going to Zion. We're going to fly into Vegas and then go to Zion. So if anyone has any Zion recommendations, put it in the chat because we're going to do some hiking and stuff. It'll be fun. A little girlfriend trip.
Oh, that'll be, yeah, my husband and I just came back from a Vegas trip this past weekend. It's our annual
fun.
like self-care, recharge, take a break from mom and dad kind of thing. So,
Oh, I love it. That's an
yes,
awesome
but I
idea.
do not know how to swim.
You don't
I
know how to swim.
tried.
Okay.
I
Okay.
do not. And I married into a whole family of swimmers. So they've all tried.
It's great. Well, one of these days, a growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
Keep trying. Well, that's great. Yeah, I'm not much of my daughter's a fish. Like she just loves to swim so much. And I'm not great at it either. And my parents have a pool, so we'll be doing that soon this summer. And but Army Grace, I would love to get started with some questions that I have prepared for you. And my first question is just tell us about occupational therapy for moms, how it can benefit moms in the prenatal, postpartum period, as well as beyond.
Yeah, so the root word of occupational therapy is occupation, right? So kind of looking at it as your job or your roles in life. And so matrescence, this developmental stage of becoming a mother, there's a lot that you have to learn in this new role, definitely in pregnancy, postpartum, and in motherhood. And how I come and help is through education and providing tools. For example, during the pregnancy period, I've been helping my moms set up like their nursery in terms of like ergonomics, making sure we're maintaining good posture. I've also helped work on their nursery or their registries, excuse me, kind of picking out like all the developmental toys. If they're choosing to breastfeed, what equipment would be supportive with that. And then also a lot of my moms, you've been working on creating their village and kind of figuring out the resources around them, like what play groups are there around them? Are there is there a fit for mom, like a workout class, or is there a mom walk around them? I've been helping them kind of establish their community and set up a little plan for them in postpartum. And then in postpartum, I can come into the home as early as 2 weeks postpartum and just kind of see how moms are doing, adjusting to this new role of motherhood, getting back to their day-to-day routines, kind of managing all the things of recovery, baby feeding, navigating, household tasks, delegating tasks. And then in motherhood, I'm working on developmental milestones and bonding with baby. I could also work on developmental delays, but I'm really here to empower and educate mom to feel confident to, be aware of what the developmental milestones are and then be able to bond with baby.
I really feel like so much of occupational therapy for moms is like advocate, like you're saying, like there's just so much that goes into it from a developmental standpoint and really like embracing the full picture. And it's not just like one aspect of development, it's like numerous aspects, like the essence concept.
Yeah, it's so important to think too that skill sets isn't just a physical thing, right? There's the social emotional piece to it. There's the mental side of it and kind of addressing all those different factors that can result in success as a mom and kind of fulfilling your role as a mom in that too.
Yeah. Now, Army Grace, why would you recommend, or like, I know we talk about in our episodes before about community and moms and how important that is. Can you talk with us more about mom community? I know we touched base about it with Reena as well. I just think it's something that really is a topic that we need to hear more amongst ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I know with Reena and her anthropology background, like as humans, like we are not meant to, do this alone. We do need a village, but resources these days don't really allow us to necessarily have that village. I think there's a lot of ownership that moms have to take into finding these village. So
Yeah.
with my pregnant moms, we looked at, their local hospital. Is there a support group if they're a nursing mom, or is there, kind of a new mom meetup, or in Homewood, I know there's something called the Mom Walk. So there's like a group of moms that just meet up for a walk. And then I'm also a member of like Fit for Mom. So that's an organization that promotes like physical well-being, like with exercise, and you can bring your baby to classes. And so it's kind of figuring out what support systems are in your neighborhood and in your network that you can attend to. And a big thing I've kind of seen the gap of, mom and baby classes. I think there's a lot of classes that are for like 2 to 3 year olds or older. And so I actually just recently started doing a mom and baby group, focusing on moms and babies between 0 to 12 months of age.
Mm. No, and I'm just kind of thinking of this as you're talking about mom and baby groups. And I think that it's such an interesting word. And I'm trying to remember this specific wording of it's like joy seeing each other's faces, the shared, it's not shared joy, but you know what I'm talking about? Like it's this reciprocal something or other, but like and I don't know if that's really as much with occupational therapy, but it's just on my mind of like how I feel like it's like kind of like you're bouncing up like feelings off of each other, if that makes sense. Is that kind of what you see in your groups as well?
Sometimes, because these moms, they often don't know any other moms who
Yeah.
have kids or who have newborns. And that, journey can be isolating and lonely. And I know I experienced that in my own motherhood, but just providing a space for these moms to meet other moms and talk about the things of, like, it was hard for me to get out of the house this morning, but I'm glad I made it. Or like, I am
Yes.
worried about some of these milestones and I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job, or I think I'm being really too hard on myself. Like I haven't taken a walk yet today, but I'm going to go for a walk, kind of thing.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, like just to be able to talk amongst each other about it. I remember when I was a mom with my first, I did a couple, I don't remember if it was like Gymboree or some kind of mom baby class,
Yeah.
but um it was just, I don't know, like the shared experience of like my daughter, she was like 6 months old or something at the time, just like crawling all over like her daughter and like just being able to bond of like, look at the two of them. And like my daughter was being like really aggressive, like which at one point like poked the other baby's eye and I felt awful. But it was just, I really do remember that interaction and how like important it was for me to talk to that other mom and to feel like I wasn't alone.
Definitely. I mean, I think there is power in commiseration, kind of being like, you know what, this is hard. And it's like, oh gosh, me too. And then just like validating your experience. Like, yes, like my child did poke another child, but oftentimes like my kids have like either pushed or bit somebody. And the mom has been like, oh, my kid's a biter too. They needed to learn a lesson. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's nice to have those comforting moments because it's hard.
Absolutely.
Really
Yes,
hard.
it really is. Yeah. And there is so much like I mean, I know a theme I've been saying a lot today is just knowing that you're not alone, but I think that is so important. It's so important. And it brings me also to, in addition to community, what do you recommend for moms of like self-care tips and being able to fill your cup up in some way that allows you more energy?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this either on our podcast episode or on our live, but I
Yeah.
think that self-care should be a daily essential. Just like taking a vitamin, you need your daily dose of self-care. Whether that be something really small that takes 5 minutes, or maybe that's something that's an hour and that means you have to leave the house and get childcare for the moment. But for me, every day I have an alarm that goes off at 2 o'clock. And then goes off again at 2:05. So for those like 5 minutes, I'm like present fully for myself, and I get to pick for those 5 minutes. Either I like do mindlessly scroll for 5 minutes, or I just put my phone down, or I drink my tea and just look out the window and just like have
Yeah.
pure silence myself.
Yep. Yep. I love it. And I think you posted on your platform one of your little your sessions, right? Like you were in the car or something and like you posted something
Oh
about
yeah,
self-care. I'm like, oh my goodness. Armi Grace and her self-care moment.
yes, and
I love it.
yes. I mean, as a mom, it's definitely harder to incorporate those pieces of self-care, and self-care can be as simple as spending those extra 5 to 10 minutes in the car when you come home from the
Yes.
store because nobody needs you. And sometimes,
Mhm.
as silly as that sounds, sometimes it's like those 5 to 10 minutes kind of make or break the day when your kid throws a tantrum, because if you think about it, you are making yourself, I guess, more, I don't know if resilient is the right word, but more tolerable of the hard stuff because you've taken the time to take care of yourself and you can process more and you're not in a fight or flight reaction anymore. Versus like, if I know I've not gotten any self-care and my kids are like, Mommy, I want this, Mommy, I want this, Mommy, and they're like walking in on me in the bathroom, it's like, can I just have myself? And it's like,
I know. Yes.
sure. And then you're like, ooh, did I take some time for myself? And then you have to, the whole accountability of, I'm sorry, Mommy was grumpy. Like, it's not your fault. Like, Mommy needs a second, that whole thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Having the conversation afterwards, like, but still it is important. I mean, I have my self-care. Well, I don't know, Starbucks and I have a
Yeah.
complicated relationship, but sometimes
Yeah.
that is so helpful, like for me, just to have like, and it doesn't have to be Starbucks or whatever, or whatever it is that like, I feel like for a minute I'm able to do that. And for me, I'm such a like morning person that, and I know some people are more night people, but whatever that is, I think, I try to consistently have that me time. So not necessarily
Mhm.
mom time, but like me time of
Yeah.
being able to
Yeah.
reset in some way. And it sounds like Vegas too for you guys was like that as
Yes.
well, which is so
It's
great.
definitely a reset for our marriage and, kind of putting things into perspective of, wow, we really get to connect and have some time together without, a kid running, running in between us
Yes.
or something.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I probably do this maybe every other week, but on my Instagram page, I kind of do like a quick summary of things I did for self-care this week, just to kind of give a little summary to moms or whoever else is kind of looking for self-care ideas. And they range from I took a walk, or I rearranged my flowers, or I bought myself flowers. It's like those little small things that really can accumulate to help you have a full bucket so that you could show up for everybody that needs you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it is those, I mean, it's different for everyone, but like for me the other day, I rearranged my pantry and it was like so amazing. Like Target had some sales on baskets and I'm like, I'm just gonna get a bunch of these. And it really did. Like it filled my cup up and it wasn't that I mean, I felt like I was getting something done, but also doing something for myself. And it does like shift your mood a bit. Um, and I don't know if we talked about this, Army Grace, on our episodes or alive, but on like values as far as for some moms, like you may enjoy doing, I don't know, gardening or something like that, or whatever that is that helps fill your cup up. How would you recommend like kind of discovering that about yourself? Like for me, I guess like thinking on Aaron's talk earlier, how he was saying, like time, we were talking about an activity that I would do where time just like passes me by because I'm so engrossed in it. Like I know those type
Yeah.
of things I really love. But is there anything else too that you would recommend to kind of discover that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily have a specific way of discovering it. I think sometimes it's fine, especially more in like the mom realm, is something that truly just like serves me, right? So
Yeah.
something that I really invested in, which relates to my self-care, is actually my DIY eyelash extensions. And
Ooh.
I used to like get them done. And as a mom, it was really hard to like sit for an hour and a half or
Yeah.
so to somebody to do them. And it just like wasn't the most time conducive thing. And I would just like rattle off everything in my to-do list while I was laying there. So I actually started buying these, their Flutter Habit, and it's turned into something that's like self-care for me, but also like a
Yeah.
skill that I've like had to master. And like I've invested time in like watching videos or like um picking like different products. But actually in occupational therapy, like leisure or doing like hobbies is part of your ADLs or your day or IADLs. Like that's such an important part of your role as a person, that you have leisure activities, that you find hobbies that are enjoyable for your time. But it definitely is hard, I'm sure, to find or to even initiate something. But I think even like looking through Instagram or socials, being like, oh, you know what, that does look really cool. Like I have a friend who's gotten really into like birds recently, and they're like looking at birds and they're looking at videos, and
Oh,
it's like, wow,
yeah.
you're 30 when you're in your 30s, when you're like, oh my God, look at that cardinal in the tree.
Yes. Oh, I love looking at bird. Yeah, that's what I guess that is, you're aging when, but still it
Yeah.
is, it's so relaxing. But yes, I think it is, those are good points. And I really, and I think that's important how you're saying in occupational therapy, there is this ADL hobby thing, because that is important. That's part of who we are. And I think sometimes I feel guilty for doing that, but, it is important. And I think it also, allows me to kind of show my kids and my family that it's important to do those type of self-care things for ourselves as well.
And I think that's a good point that you bring across, is that you're showing and you're modeling your
Yeah.
children, that you do have a hobby. There is something that you enjoy doing outside of just your day-to-day things. And I think that holds value too, because they're investing in themselves, just themselves, right? Without like worrying about any other feedback from another
Yes.
person, or like wanting like approval. It's like, no, they're doing that for them.
Yes, absolutely. Now, Army Grace, I want to bring up grounding techniques with you, because I think that's also a part of what you do is with mom occupational therapy. Is that right?
Yes, we definitely can use grounding techniques for self-regulation, especially when you're overstimulated in motherhood, or even if you're having a moment of mom rage, kind of taking a step
Yeah.
back and navigating that safe space for you.
What is, this seems kind of like a topic I've been hearing more about, this mom rage topic. Is that something, it sounds like, I feel like it's almost, I don't know the right word, but it sounds like it's just emotions that we are finding it difficult to control. And like you're saying, taking a step back, and kind of recognizing those emotions. But can you tell us a bit more about that?
I think there's a lot of components to mom rage. There's definitely a sensory perspective to us. There's kind of a nervous system, like fight or flight response related to it, but there is also like the mental side, and if there's any trauma or things, and those would be a little bit out of my scope, but kind of focusing more on like the sensory piece and the fight or flight piece. It's bringing awareness to our body and kind of like the physiological responses that kind of telling us that we are on the verge of a mom rage episode. Like I know when I start getting mad, my palms get sweaty, my heart starts beating fast, like my cheeks get hot. And so a piece of it is identifying, what does mom rage look like? Because a lot of moms will be like, it just comes out of nowhere. And it's like, yes and no. Like we need to be more in tune with our body so that we can acknowledge like, okay, it's starting to build up. How can I stop it or decrease it before it ends up being a huge mom rage episode? And that's kind of where some grounding techniques can come in. Because I think taking yourself out of the situation, like for example, I know for me, a trigger is often the morning routine when we're trying to get out of the house with my kids, when it's like, we do the same thing every morning, guys. We eat breakfast, brush our teeth, put our shoes on, and leave, right? But lo and behold, sometimes we don't always remember that. And so before I start losing my mind, which I will admit, I'm not perfect. Like I still lose, I lose it every now and then, but it's like taking the step back and being like, okay, I need a break from whatever this triggering environment is. And just even like removing myself from the mudroom, I'll sit in like the living room and I'll take like 5 deep breaths. And then if you have a second, I try and think of like, okay, I go through the senses. Like what are 5 things I can see? What are 4 things I can smell? What are 3 things I can hear? What are 2 things I can taste? And so on. I'm losing track of all the senses, but just being able to count down from 5 so that you're, kind of shifting your mindset and your like presence into something else, and kind of like that negativity that's starting to, cause those fight or flight behaviors.
I I'm so glad you reminded us about that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, because that is something that I want to try to do more of, because I think I do have a bit of that. I'm trying to recognize my emotions more, but I think before I was aware of it, I would be someone that would be like, oh, it comes out of nowhere. Like I don't, but now that I'm, yeah. And I think we all kind of like it, there's so much of this space that I'm trying to lengthen that space between reaction and response. And those grounding techniques, I feel like can help lengthen that space a bit. And practicing that and like giving myself grace though too, like you're saying, like not every day is going to be perfect. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know how many times we've been late to school now. It's probably a problem at this point, but I mean, it is what it is, where it's like I don't know, like there is this like I want to make sure that I'm also enjoying the moment, but at the same time, I get stressed out if we're running late. And it's like, well, here's another morning that mom's getting upset. But at the same time, I don't know how many times I have to remind someone to put their shoes on or brush their teeth. And so it is that balance of like, okay, let me control my emotions. Like it's not going to be in the world if we're late. But at the same time, like it's now been a few times we've been late and mom doesn't want to like keep doing this. So yeah. But then working with obviously like the external factors, but what are the internal factors that I can control at this point in time too?
Yeah. And that's one way to kind of intervene as an occupational therapist for me. And so something else too, I would kind of talk about like the environmental setup, right? So like are your kids' shoes, like, are they in like a cubby or in the cabinet, or are they like laid out right next to their jacket or their backpack? Or do your kids prefer like visual things? So like, do you have a visual schedule? No, these are some things I help my clients with as well. Like maybe we need a visual schedule right by the door. Maybe we like Velcro off each little activity so that the kids have a little bit of ownership of it too.
Oh, I like that. That's great. Now, do you have on your website and platform like information, like tips like that, or like what? Because gosh, I feel like, oh my goodness, I need you in my house too
Yeah.
with those
Yeah,
type
we
of
can
things.
definitely schedule a session, Valerie.
I need you to tell me where to or tell my kids where to put their shoes so they can handle it.
Yeah. I
But
mean, there isn't necessarily any direct information on my page about that. I'm hopefully starting a blog soon.
ooh,
You
that's
can
exciting.
on the added to there are a lot of tips I put here and there on my Instagram page. I do have a teachers pay teachers store, and I don't have any
Sorry,
visual schedules on there, but I have like some. Sorry.
can you repeat that one more time? It's kind of breaking up a bit of what you have.
I have a teachers pay teacher store.
Mm,
I just have a few products on there. They're definitely more like pediatric related. Like I have like a pre-writing or a pre-cutting activity skill set. I don't have any visual schedules on there just yet, but I do have like some free resources in addition to like priced things.
that's awesome. Now, Army Grace, as we wrap up here, I want to give you the opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you. I also put all the links to your website, your Instagram page, and our podcast as well on the chat. But also let us know, and then if there's anything you want to leave us with before you go.
Yeah. So my tagline for my business is motherhood is hard, but getting support shouldn't be. So if you have any concerns in terms of, pregnancy, postpartum, or motherhood, I am here to support you. I do offer free 15-minute phone consultations just to see even if we're the right fit. And if we're not the right fit, I am more than happy to refer you to somebody who could be, because I definitely don't want to leave my moms without support. I am currently running a mom and baby group at the Pelvic Gym, which is owned by Dr. Brie Coleman. I think she'll be on here in a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I also have a group in May that will be in Orland Park, and hopefully some groups in June as well. But I am on Instagram. I'm always excited to connect with some moms and kind of just, provide that safe space for discussion and support. Commiseration and validation goes a long way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Army Grace. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for all that you're doing for us moms.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Valerie. I love that you put this all together.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I hope you have an absolutely wonderful weekend and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. And I'm going to try and stay on for as long as I can. to
Oh,
just listen.
awesome. Yes, yes, yeah. So you will be in the chat. Feel free to talk on the chat if you'd like as well. And anyone who's attending, if you have any questions or anything, just send in a message or feel free to DM any of us as well on our platforms. So upcoming now is Dr. Brie Coleman. So whenever she's ready, I will introduce her and talk about all the awesome things that she is doing. Hey,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad I could tune in a little bit early so I could catch some of Armi's presentation because super valuable.
Yes, yes, she's doing incredible work. And I just love being able to get all of you guys together to share all the awesome work that you're doing and with us moms and the community.
I so appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, when you have a passion, it is certainly something that you want to share. And
Yes.
so anytime we get a platform to chat on, we're here for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so what I'll do, Dr. Bright, is introduce you and give a little bit of your intro, and then we'll get started with our questions. And if anyone has any questions in the meantime in the chat, feel free to drop them in. And I have listed for the title of our talk, Pelvic Health with Dr. Brie Coleman. And you are a physical therapist as well as a doctorate in physical therapy. Is that correct?
Yes.
It's amazing. And so Dr. Brie, with the handle themobilemommy.pt, is a licensed doctor of physical therapy and pelvic mobility specialist. She is the owner of Pelvic Gem in Flossmoor, Illinois. Dr. Brie will talk with us about pelvic PT and its importance, pelvic health advocacy, as well as ways to improve pelvic health. And you can check her out at her website, which is pelvicgem.com, and I'll put that link as well into the chat. So thanks again, Dr. Brie, for being here.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Just one little correction in terms of my handle. It's at the Mobile Mommy PT.
Oh,
No
okay. Oh, okay. Let me put that in there. So
Just so you can find me.
no, that's great. Thank you for the correction. At
The Mobile Mommy.
Oh, let me put the Mobile Mommy PT.
That's it.
Okay.
Yes.
There we go. Makes it easier.
Yes.
Yes. Well, I have been asking everyone as they come on if they want to share 2 truths and a lie. Is there anything that you would like to share with us?
Let's see. 2 truths and a lie. So in terms of pelvic health, right? My 2 truths and a lie are, get ready.
Okay.
So one is pelvic health is for everyone. 2 is pelvic health is only if you've had a baby. And 3 is pelvic health is beneficial while pregnant.
Ooh, that is amazing. 2 truths and a lie. I'm going to say number 2.
Definitely.
It's a lie. Yes.
Yes, that's the lie. Yes, pelvic health is for everybody. It is for all genders. It is for literally with anyone with a pelvis. Okay. However, in terms of Mobile Mommy and in terms of the pelvic gem, we have decided to specialize in supporting women specifically. And so, but that does not mean that pelvic health is not for all genders. And so please, if you're having pelvic floor dysfunction of any kind, reach out because help is absolutely out there and available. And so I do support and advocate for all of our genders to get support in this area. Okay.
That's incredible.
In terms of number 3, in terms of it's very supportive and really necessary in terms of pregnancy because we can have better birth outcomes. We can have like better labor and better delivery, just easier on mom.
Mm,
We're actually supporting and walking around during pregnancy, not dreading and hating our life.
yeah.
Like, it does not and should not be painful to go through pregnancy. And so that's a lot of what we help support with. And then
Mm.
also, in terms of our Black maternal health, yay, Black maternal health week started yesterday.
Oh,
And
that's
so in
awesome.
terms of those, we're actually doing a lot of work in terms of helping moms stay alive, just by having
Yes.
another set of eyes and being able to check and keep a hold of what's going on within their pregnancy. That
Mhm.
is absolutely part of and should be a part of your birth plan, is who is there on the team to actually help you through this, right? And I think that part of when we're talking about birth plan is we just get real focused on, I want a vaginal delivery in a hospital with epidural. That's it. Dim lights, music going, cool. No, we need to think about the entire process of
Yes.
pregnancy and our fourth trimester of postpartum as part of that birth plan. And so
Mm.
part of that is helping to navigate people through that and to be that support system to say, here's some things that you may not have thought of, and here's some things that we need to prepare for. And then also preparing physically for that labor process to be able to understand mentally, it's a mental game, right?
Yeah.
Our mental controls our physical, and those two things need to be very well connected going into birth so that we don't tear, so that we can actually have this positive experience, and that if it's part of your journey, to have the least amount of interventions as possible.
Mm. I love that.
Mhm.
And I sometimes, I remember in my pregnancy, would get worried with everything. Where I'm like, oh, is this okay? Is this okay? And it sounds like pelvic PT is something that is like something that we should be doing as with pregnancy, that it's helpful, and that what would you say to kind of alleviate some maybe hesitations or people who don't know much about it?
Yeah. Um, well, in terms of, I'm not really sure where the hesitation actually would be because,
Yeah,
in terms of hiring a professional, that's exactly what you're doing. So it's just
absolutely.
improving your outcome of your experience, essentially, right? You're
Yeah.
actually like hiring someone to do a job. And so we take this job very seriously, as well as the rest of your birth team. And so I don't know where that hesitation honestly would be.
That's
Um,
incredible.
so I'm not sure. But if it is shame, if it is anxiety, if it is fear, that all should hopefully um, calm down with the fact that you're literally hiring someone who has dedicated their life to understanding and learning and researching and doing the things.
Yes.
And some of us have been through it. So we actually bring in that personal level of experience as well to help navigate. And so I honestly felt more anxiety with not knowing and not
Yeah.
understanding what to expect. I think our only education of birth is what we see on the movies, and
Yes.
we should be screaming and hollering and like cursing everybody out because labor is hard and it is painful and it is scary and all the things that can happen. Or we could be prepared and we can understand, we can have our advocates all lined up and also prepared, such as our birth partner. Like, our birth partner sometimes has not been through it either, right? And
Uh-huh.
they don't know how to support us through that.
Yeah.
So actually preparing as an actual team, again, actually having collaboration between your pelvic floor therapist and your doula and your midwife and your postpartum doula, your
Yeah.
OT, such as Armi, and actually bringing everybody on board so that everybody has the same plan, has the same amount of knowledge, and we can all help support you through it. Because the worst thing is when we go through this and now we have birth trauma that is completely unrelated to like the actual birth outcome. So now we have this beautiful little baby and everybody's telling us how amazingly happy we should be and we should be glowing and all of this and be so happy that you're alive and baby's alive and all the things, but your experience
Mm.
It's terrible, right? We have a very negative experience sometimes associated with the birth of our child or the carrying of our child. And that actually we carry through into anxiety, into depression. And those are things that can be almost like preventable. So,
Mm.
taking
Oh,
the
I
time
love
to actually
that.
research that and actually reaching out and asking questions and seeing if it's the right fit for you.
Oh, yes. And I think that, gosh, I wish I knew about this when I was pregnant, because it's like, um, I that's incredible to be able to kind of monitor, have this team environment, being able to, work with everyone, like you're saying, like with your doula, with your healthcare provider, have these appointments. And as far as appointments go, like how often do you see pregnant patients? Like, is it a certain amount of time, or is it as needed, or how does that work?
It depends. It's actually very individualized
Okay.
based on the person that's in front of me. And so, depending on where you're starting from, right, can really lead us into what you really need. And so, we're not over prescribing. We're not saying, hey, I need to see you 3 times a week for 16 weeks and da 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 da. No, if that's not what you need, right? Especially working with moms, because sometimes it's not our first kid, it's not our first rodeo, right? And so we
Yeah.
have other obligations and we have other things that we actually have on our plate as well. And we need to fit this in as well. It's still a priority. However, when we become moms, as we know, that
Mhm.
list of priorities becomes longer and longer. And then we stop being on that list because everything else is coming before us. And that happens even with our moms that are pregnant with their second or third or fourth or eighth. And so those can really be where the most support is needed, even when you feel like you know what to expect and you know what to do. That was my mistake in
Mm.
pregnancy, was thinking that I knew what I was doing going
Yeah.
into it,
Yeah.
and really should have hired that doula and really should have hired that pelvic floor therapist to help me out. Because even professionals need help. We need a team.
Absolutely. Now, I have a question as far as the in-network versus out-of-network. It
Yeah,
sounds like there's some information. I know I would love for you to share, like because it sounds like out-of-network is something that for pelvic PT is applicable. Is that correct?
absolutely. And so um, in network means that you have contracted with your insurance company who has contracted with providers. Okay.
Okay.
And so that's just saying that, um, quite honestly, in network is more of a marketing thing
Yeah.
more than a skilled provider or quality care provider list. Okay.
Okay.
And
Hmm.
so it does is not indicative of the care that you will receive. Okay. What
Mm.
insurance doesn't want you to know is that you also have out of network benefits, and they kind of even, not to talk bad about insurance. We need insurance, okay?
Yeah.
Because if you get sick, you need insurance. But in this case
Sure.
specifically, what they
Hmm.
don't talk about is out of network and how those benefits can actually be really beneficial to you. So, um, in network, like I said, it's a marketing thing. And so they have to jack up their rates a little bit higher in order to keep the lights on and to do the things and hire the people and, keep the whole ball rolling.
Hmm.
Out of network sometimes doesn't have that same challenge. And so even though it looks like your percent coverage is a lot lower, sometimes it's actually better coverage in the sense that our rates are lower. And so
Okay.
we have to just have, if you just think about percentages, right? It
Hmm.
may actually end up better if it's just a financial standpoint type of thing. You might actually end up better out of network. Another thing
Mm.
that's a benefit for patients in terms of choosing an out of network provider is the level of control that you have within that system. And so now you are not actually bound by limitations, or you're not bound by having to have something necessarily wrong in order for you to have care. And so it is a little bit of freedom for the patient in terms of pelvic, I was talking to a professor of mine last night, and we were talking about how I am a pelvic therapist, but she was having some issues with her hamstring. And I was like, come on in, we can help you with that. And she's like, but I thought you were pelvic. And I'm like, yes, I'm pelvic. And as an out of network provider, I can actually work outside of the
Oh,
pelvis. And so,
awesome.
as a specialty, sometimes they make you stick strictly to that area of the body as you were referred to. Okay. And that's a
Mm,
very in-network insurance-based thing. However, out of
okay.
network, we actually have that freedom and flexibility to look outside the pelvis, to treat outside the pelvis. If you come in with a headache, we can treat that. Like you
Oh,
come in with an ankle pain, we could treat that. Like it's so much stuff that's actually integrated into your pelvic health that's not just located in the pelvis. And so many of the times you come in for pelvic health and we're looking at how you're breathing. We're looking at how you're walking. How are your feet actually distributing your weight? How is that actually connecting to your hip? And if your hip is actually connected to your abdominals, and what all these things are doing in terms of what you're experiencing. And so
Yes.
it's just a liberating experience, at least for me. I'm going to speak specifically for me, and in that realm of pelvic health I just find so much more freedom than I had in an in-network system.
yes. Oh my gosh, this is incredible information. Like I just didn't know much about any of this. And like knowledge is power. Like where this out of network is it's just all of this is so helpful. And you truly are like treating like not like you're saying, not just the pelvis, but the entire body,
The
which
entire body. Yes. Yes.
that's
I treat
awesome.
from a pelvic perspective. And so what that means is that, like, if you come in with back pain, that absolutely could be related to your pelvic floor. Um, or it's not related to your pelvic floor. It's related to your breathing diaphragm or the weakness in your abdominals. And all of that is still related to your pelvic floor. And so it's about connecting the dots and
Mhm.
actually understanding that movement first has to be stabilized before it can become like fluid. And so if we're having pain, it's usually a signal that our body is communicating something or a need from us. And
Mhm.
then we need to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, Dr. Brie, can you talk with us about pelvic health and pelvic floor advocacy? Because it seems like all people really, I mean, we all deserve to have this care and access to this care.
Right. And in terms of advocacy, we do need to understand the right questions to ask. I think that's where we first need to start from,
Okay.
is to be able to walk into your provider and request what we want and actually ask the right questions. So let's say, for example, you are leaking urine, right? Like that's a quite obvious like pelvic health specialty issue. Okay.
Yes.
And your provider goes, okay, well, we're going to send you to the urologist. Okay. So we go to the urologist, we check out everything, make sure that it's nothing in terms of anything systemically wrong. And that urologist puts you on a pill to, you know, calm down your bladder. Well, that might not be what you need, right? It's
Mm.
actually not asking the right questions as the provider to say, oh, I also need to ask you, are you constipated? Are you having back pain? Are you, having pain with sex? Like all of these things, or complications with sex, right? Difficulty. All these things are actually also related to actually teasing out what's going on with your pelvic floor. So
Mm.
instead of throwing a pill at something, or even surgery at something, which is another big one,
Yeah.
actually looking to see what's actually happening, because a lot of times, even with surgery, now you've lifted the bladder, let's just say, and the symptoms persist. And now you've just went through a whole surgery and now you don't have trust in the system. And now, so having the right questions as a patient to say, well, what do you think about pelvic floor physical therapy? What do you think about that first? And they can share their experience, actually challenging. What else could this be, right? Instead of let's just rush to surgery. Actually asking, do you have a referral for a pelvic floor physical therapist. And if they send you a generic script where it's like eval and treat, and it has no specific actual location, it has no specific actual provider, is even more specific to say, like, are you referring me to this list of what and
Yeah.
who? What is their philosophy? How do they treat? Like, what should I expect? None of those things are actually things that your provider possibly even knows. And so
Mm-hmm.
starting there,
Yeah.
after challenging your provider to give you a little bit more information, if they don't know, there's resources out here, right? So if it is on you, once you have that referral, if that's what you want, then you can actually do some research. And when you're calling around to places, let's say to an organization that's on that list, one of the questions that you really should ask is, hey, like, are you actually specialized in pelvic health? because
Yes.
because you bill it as we offer pelvic health does not mean that that facility actually has a pelvic floor specialist. It actually could just be a physical therapist who knows some stuff about how the body works, right? But they're not actually a pelvic floor specialist. And that's a little bit of a difference, right? Where we
Mm.
have these inner workings where our thought process is about this issue first and then outside. Theirs is more outside and then looking hopefully in. It's
Yes.
more of a hope, right?
Sure. Sure.
Also, pelvic floor physical therapy actually does what's called an internal assessment of the pelvic floor. And so when you're calling, do your providers actually provide an internal assessment of the pelvic floor? That is a specialty. Okay. And if they're like, I don't know, well, who are you trusting with your care? Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So knowing which questions to really ask is super important in terms of your self advocacy, in terms of provider advocacy. I do think, and this has been my goal for this year, is that as a pelvic floor therapist, I need to be educating those providers. And I do need to be reaching out to platforms such as yours so that I can actually reach more people and saying what my perspective is on pelvic health and where it should be here, and reaching out to different providers to actually provide that education so that they can answer those questions. And having them answer my call would be phenomenal. So, but yeah, and so I do think it's a twofold. I do think we need to be able to ask the right questions, and our providers need to be able to answer. Um, Social media has been fantastic with being able to understand some of those nuances and questions that we want to get answered more specifically. And I think that that's great. We do need to analyze as well and tease out the mess through social media as well, because pelvic health
Yes.
happens to be a little buzzword right now. And every, fitness influencer is also treating the pelvic floor,
Mm.
right? So
Mhm.
we do need to
Yes.
be a little bit more analytical with who we actually trust with our care.
Yes. Such good points. And I think that's so important because I do feel like there is this kind of just not as much knowledge on this in so many areas of medicine. And I can completely see like having this referral, but not knowing then like the provider doesn't know anything about this referral, and this education and this advocacy with qualified professionals like yourself, I think is so important. And it's and it sounds like pelvic health dysfunction is very treatable too. Like you were saying, pills, surgery, a lot of people like there's a lot of that, but also are there other aspects of treating pelvic health? I mean, I am so when I feel like you were like, I'm just so like interested in everything you're saying because don't really know much about it either as well.
Uh-huh. Yeah. In terms of pelvic floor dysfunction, most of it is treatable. Like
Mm,
most of it is treatable.
that's
And
awesome.
it's treatable in these earlier stages. And so that's another, advocacy point and education piece, is that we cannot, as patients, continue to hold things back from our providers. And we cannot continue to hold things back from our friends. Like, talk,
Yeah.
girl. Like, actually
Yes.
communicate and like, let's share. Let's stop gatekeeping what we're going through, because then when we're the one going through it, we feel like we're the only one, right?
Yep.
1 in 4 women in the US have pelvic floor dysfunction. So how many women are on this
Wow.
call? Well,
Yes.
some of us got some pelvic floor dysfunction, right? And so we do need to be able to communicate better and make this a little bit more mainstream. We should be able to talk about our pelvic health as any other thing. Um, and so, yeah, it's exceptionally treatable, especially when like you literally start, by the time you have pelvic floor dysfunction, you have a lot of other things that you've been ignoring. Okay.
hmm
And
hmm
so you've been ignoring the back pain, you've been ignoring your abdominal weakness, you've been ignoring the fact that every time you walk, you get exhausted. Like, those things all lead to this, right? And so those are the things that if someone else has been through it, then they can be like, hey, maybe you should get checked out. Maybe you should go and examine this. Maybe you should bring this up, right? Because I've been through it too, and you're not alone.
Mm. Oh, I love it. I love it. And what type of lifestyle modifications are there? I mean, it sounds like, I mean, just stress management, sleep, exercise. Can those type of things help with pelvic floor?
Absolutely. In terms of stress management, that's probably our number one.
Mm.
That is a huge missing piece in a lot of pelvic health programs right now, is being able to communicate and talk about the stress, right? And to actually dive into this whole person type of treatment in terms of what can we do in terms of your stress management to actually help offload the pelvic floor. Okay. And so if we are not addressing stress, if we're not addressing trauma, if we are not addressing the mental perspective of the overload of our life, we are not actually treating pelvic floor dysfunction. Pelvic floor holds a lot of tension, just like our neck does, just like our jaw does, right? And so
Mm.
if you're one of those people who, like, when you're stressed out, your shoulders are earrings all of a sudden, like, those are the people that we actually need to breathe and talk
Yes.
to and have that better strategy in terms of what we're going to do to help calm down the pelvic floor, right? Because
Mm.
most of the time, our pelvic floor dysfunction is not because we're weak and floppy. It's because we're actually tight and weak. We're actually so far lifted and locked that it's it still doesn't have strength. It's so damn tired. Every time you sneeze, it's like flip, and
Yep.
it just lets go, right? Because it's so exhausted. And so we actually need to provide some, therapy to folks, some actual therapy to say, you have an ear. Like, I'm just here to listen to you, right? I'm just
Yes.
here to actually have that space and to create that space for you to actually exhale, right? And to actually let that load go so that you can breathe again, so that you can expand your ribs, you can let your pelvic floor move, and then we can start to actually work on control. Okay.
Yes.
But if we're not
Yes.
addressing the mental health burden, we're not doing our job as pelvic therapists.
Mm. That's incredible. Like, I had no idea how connected that all is. And I'm just loving your shoulders as earrings. I'm thinking of the pelvis, the pelvic floor as well, like, which that really, I mean, that makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. And as far as like exercise and diet, is there anything in particular that is helpful, or is it just kind of more like making sure you're eating healthier or extra moving more? Is there anything else to know about it?
Totally. So, in terms of, and this is very, very, very watered down, but
Yes.
in
Yes.
terms of exercise, our number one exercise for pelvic health is deep diaphragmatic breathing. Okay.
hmm
And so that is actually this 360-degree breath that we teach patients how to do, where we're actually expanding our rib cage and we're actually using all 4 components of our core to oscillate and to work together. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes, especially when stressed, we stop breathing effectively. Our abdominals actually lock down, and now we're actually breathing shallow throughout the day versus actually expanding our rib cage. And so, number one is teaching people how to breathe, and that is an exercise in itself.
Wow.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then two, in terms of nutrition, water, just plain water, just water. You would be surprised at how many people go through the day never drinking water, like none.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so that right there, it's like, no wonder your bladder is trying to empty every 5 minutes because it's a little raisin and can't hold any water. We want to turn that raisin into a grape, nice plump, holding all that juice. That's what we want. We want a grape, not a raisin, right?
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
water, we actually need water in terms of our nerve activity. We cannot have strength or relaxation or pain-free without our nerves being happy, right? Our muscles need water, our organs need water, our brain needs water. And so water is our number one key, especially as moms. We're just so busy. We tell our kids to drink water, and then here we are dehydrated.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. I know that's yeah, so true. So true.
Mhm.
Now, Dr. Brie, where can we find more information? Because you just have a wealth of just incredible information. I know you have a website and Instagram we talked about. I also put links into the show notes for that, or into the chat box. Can you share with us any other way we can get in touch with you and anything else you'd like to leave with our listeners as we wrap up today?
Yeah, definitely. You can absolutely reach me on both of those platforms. I do offer a few, and I'm starting to offer even more actual like programs and what am I trying? Meetings, like actual events. Thank you. There it is.
Yeah.
Throughout the month. And so this month we're featuring Armi, and she is doing a
Ooh,
mom and baby group on Thursday mornings, which has been really amazing. This has been something
awesome.
that's been a long time that a lot of my clients have been asking for. And so now we're providing it. So y'all show up. Okay. And then we
Great.
also have Core Restore, which is really working on just breath work and how that breath work is related to other exercise. And then I do have a new online program starting April 30th, which is going
Okay.
to really focus on our core strengthening. And so that is talking about all four aspects of our core, how we can strengthen that, and how we can have balance within our pelvic floor. So
Mm.
that is really, really cool. It's at a way lower price point. It meets twice a week for 30 minutes. So it's trying to incorporate the fact that we do not have time as moms. And
Yes.
it also has some in between with assignments and check-ins. And so it's going to be really amazing. Sign up for that. And then May is a whole new month, and we'll see what happens there.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Oh, I was going to ask you if you had any like virtual online things. So that's super exciting. Now, can you outside of the state of Illinois with virtual, like is that something that anyone needs to know about?
No. And so in terms of one-to-ones, in terms of therapy,
Mhm.
yes, can't treat outside the state. However, in terms of pelvic health coaching, which is what we do virtually, it's actually worldwide.
Oh,
So,
that's awesome.
yes, in terms of wanting to work with me and you're not here in the state of Illinois, that should not be prohibitive at all. And then also in terms of my virtual program, that is more fitness based. And so, yep, that
Ooh,
also can extend anywhere.
that's exciting. Your passion for pelvic health like just really shines through. I absolutely love it because it's so like you're gonna be like so interested in like, okay, what can I do for my pelvis now? And I think it is something like you're saying we need to start talking about. And I love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
And as women, we really need to stop looking at it as like something that we have like this dysfunction about, even though it is dysfunction, but like, no, this is a part of our self-care. And this is actually why it creeps
Yes.
up is that we have not been honoring our self-care and that we do need to take more time and priority for ourselves, even if it's checking out for 5, 10 minutes a day and learning how to do that effectively, learning how to actually step back in stressful situations and step into our bubble of self-care in the moment is actually something that we need to be trained and supported to do. And so, yeah, we do need to actually start looking at our public health as more of something just like fitness, just like a
Yes.
massage, just like getting our nails or hair done. No, this is also something that is specifically for you to feel empowered and strong as you walk through your life.
I love it. 100%. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Brie. I really appreciate your time and sharing with us all of your expertise. It's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I love it. Love it. Now, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, Dr. Brie. And I know that we have, I think, so this is my first summit here. I need to like check at my schedule because I think now we have a bit of a break until it's Central Time here. It's 2 o'clock here. So we will start back up at 2:30 Central Time with Gigi Hunt, and she is going to talk with us about radical self-care. So I'm super excited about that.
Yes.
Yes, it's going to be awesome. And so if you guys have any questions for Dr. Brie, feel free to DM or contact information. And I just absolutely, again, love it. Love it, Dr. Brie.
Thank you so much. You guys are amazing.
Thank you. Well, we'll see you guys again at 2:30 Central Time.